When a billionaire CEO shows up at your door in the middle of a storm, demanding you repay a debt you never wrote down, you know your quiet life is about to shatter. Tonight, I'm bringing you a story about broken promises, hidden betrayals, and one man who thought he'd left his past behind, until it came knocking. A story where trust becomes a weapon, and redemption costs everything. Stay with me until the very end to see how a decade-old promise changed two lives forever. And if this story reaches you, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far this tale travels across the world. Now, let the story begin. The rain came down like nails against the window. Ryan Hale didn't look up from his workbench. His hands moved with practiced precision, the tiny screwdriver catching the dim light as he adjusted the mechanism inside an old pocket watch. Around him, his cramped apartment workshop smelled of machine oil and solder, the walls lined with shelves holding broken timepieces in various states of repair. 32 years old, and this was his kingdom. 400 square feet of borrowed space above a laundromat in the industrial district of Camden Heights. The radiator clanked and hissed. Outside, February wind howled through the alley. He liked it quiet. Needed it, actually. Quiet meant safe. Quiet meant invisible. And after everything that had happened 6 years ago, the accusations, the scandal, the public destruction of his name, Ryan had learned that invisible was the only way to survive. The watch in his hands was a 1960s Omega Seamaster brought in by Mrs. Chen from the dry cleaner downstairs. The balance wheel had seized up decades ago, but Ryan had nursed it back to life over 3 evenings. He held it to his ear, listening to the steady tick-tick-tick, allowing himself a small smile. Some things could be fixed. Some things could be made whole again. Then came the knock, sharp, deliberate. 3 strikes against the door like a judge's gavel. Ryan's hands stilled. He wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody came here. The landlord had his money. The few clients he had always called first. Another knock. Harder this time. He set down the watch, wiped his hands on a rag, and crossed the small space. Through the peephole, he saw only darkness and rain. "Who is it?" he called through the door. Silence. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. Old instincts, buried but not dead, whispered warnings. His hand hovered over the deadbolt. "Mr. Hale." A woman's voice. Calm, controlled, cutting through the storm like a blade through silk. "Open the door. We need to talk." He didn't recognize the voice, but something in its tone, command mixed with something else, something almost like exhaustion, made him hesitate. Against his better judgment, Ryan slid back the bolt and opened the door. The woman standing in his doorway didn't belong in this neighborhood. She was maybe 30, tall and slender, wearing a charcoal coat that probably cost more than his rent for a year. Rain beaded on the fabric without soaking in. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her face, sharp cheekbones, pale skin, eyes like chips of obsidian, held an expression of absolute composure despite being drenched from the storm. But it was her eyes that made Ryan's breath catch. He knew those eyes. "May I come in?" she asked. It wasn't really a question. Ryan stepped aside, too stunned to do anything else. She entered his apartment like she owned it, water dripping from her coat onto his floor. She surveyed the workshop with a single sweeping glance. The cluttered workbench, the spare cot in the corner, the hot plate serving as a kitchen, and something flickered across her face. Disappointment? Pity? It was gone before he could name it. "You don't remember me," she said. Not a question, a statement. I'm not sure," Ryan managed. But that was a lie. He did remember. Or at least, he remembered a night 10 years ago, and a young woman bleeding on the side of a highway. She reached into her coat and pulled out something small. When she set it on his workbench, Ryan felt the world tilt. An old pocket watch. Tarnished silver case, cracked crystal. The hands frozen at 11:47. His watch. The one he'd given away a decade ago. "My name is Elena Voss," the woman said. "Twi. 10 years ago, you stopped your car on Route 23 and found me bleeding in a ditch. You called an ambulance. You stayed with me, and when I asked you to make me a promise before you left, you did." Ryan's mouth was dry. "I remember." "Do you remember what you promised?" He did. every word. "One day, I'm going to come back," she'd said, barely conscious, her hand gripping his. "And I'm going to need your help, something important. You can't ask why. You can't say no. Promise me." And he had, because she was dying, or so he'd thought. Because in that moment, it seemed like the least he could do for someone who might not see morning. "I promised I'd help you," Ryan said quietly. No questions asked. Elena nodded. "I'm here to collect that debt, Mr. Hale." Ryan took a step back. "That was 10 years ago. I was a different person then. You can't possibly—" "I can. And I am." She moved to the window, looking out at the storm. "Do you know who I am? What I've become?" "No. I'm the CEO of Voss Industries. We're a $70 billion conglomerate specializing in advanced manufacturing and defense technology. 3 years ago, I became the youngest woman to ever hold that position. Last month, we initiated acquisition talks with Meridian Systems, a $15 billion deal that would reshape the entire industry." She turned back to face him, and now Ryan could see something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Fear. Carefully controlled, expertly masked, but there. "Someone is destroying it from the inside," Elena continued. "Someone I trust. Someone close. And I can't figure out who." Ryan shook his head. "Then hire a private investigator. Hire 10. You're a billionaire. You don't need—" "I need someone I can trust, absolutely." Her voice cracked just for a second, just enough to reveal the woman beneath the armor. "And right now, Mr. Hale, the only person in the world I know I can trust is the man who stopped for a stranger bleeding in the rain." The silence stretched between them. Outside, thunder rumbled. Ryan looked at the watch on his table, the broken thing that never kept time, but had somehow carried a promise across a decade. "Why me?" he asked. "I fix watches. I live above a laundromat. Look around. Does this look like someone who can help you save $1 billion deal?" Elena's expression softened, just slightly. 10 years ago, you had every reason to drive past me. It was late. I was a stranger. You had nothing to gain. But you stopped anyway. You stayed until the ambulance came. And when I asked you for a promise, you gave it without knowing what it would cost. She picked up the watch, turning it over in her hands. "That tells me more about who you are than any background check ever could." "You ran a background check on me." It wasn't a question, and Elena didn't pretend otherwise. "Thorough ones. Plural. I know about your career before. I know about the scandal at Harrison and Cross Financial. I know you were accused of manipulating client accounts. I know you were never formally charged, but your reputation was destroyed anyway. I know you lost everything, your job, your career, your name." Ryan felt old anger rising in his throat. "Then you know I'm the last person who should be anywhere near a corporate scandal." "I know you were innocent." The words hung in the air like a bell tone. Ryan stared at her. "How?" "Because I'm very good at seeing through lies, Mr. Hale. It's why I'm still alive in my world. And when I read about what happened to you, I saw exactly what it was. A scapegoat sacrifice. Someone higher up needed a fall guy, and you were convenient." She set the watch down gently. "So yes, I know your past, and I know you understand exactly what it feels like when the people you trust turn on you, when the system you believed in chews you up and spits you out, when your whole world collapses and nobody believes your side of the story." Elena's eyes locked onto his. "That's precisely why I need you." Ryan wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at him to close the door, go back to his quiet life, let this terrifying woman and her dangerous world stay far away from him. But she'd saved the watch. After 10 years, she'd kept it, and he had made a promise. "Tell me everything," he said. They sat at his small table, the one that served as both dining surface and secondary workbench. Elena had removed her coat, revealing a dark suit that probably cost more than his car used to be worth. She pulled out a tablet and began laying out the situation with the precision of a military briefing. "Voss Industries has been negotiating with Meridian Systems for 11 months, she began. "It's a merger technically, but in practice we're acquiring them. Their technology and quantum encryption combined with our manufacturing capabilities would create a monopoly in secure communications for the next decade." Ryan nodded, trying to follow. This was so far outside his world, it might as well have been a foreign language. 3 months ago, things started going wrong. Small things at first, a contract clause that we'd agreed to suddenly appeared different in the official documentation. A strategy memo I'd written was leaked to a competitor before our board meeting. Financial projections that should have been confidential showed up in a trade publication. Corporate espionage, Ryan said. That was my first thought. But it's not an outside attack. The changes are too precise, too perfectly timed. Whoever is doing this has access to everything, my calendar, my emails, board discussions, legal documents. They know exactly when to strike and how much damage to do without triggering obvious alarms. Elena swiped through images on her tablet, showing him documents with subtle alterations, emails with suspicious timestamps, meeting notes with key details changed. I've had 3 different security firms sweep my systems. Nothing. I've changed passwords, protocols, access permissions. The leaks continue. I've started feeding false information to my own team to try to identify the source. So far, whoever it is has been smart enough not to take the bait. What about your inner circle, your executive team? 7 people have access to everything I do. My CFO, COO, General Counsel, Head of Strategy, Chief Technology Officer, VP of Communications, and my executive assistant. I've worked with most of them for years. I trust them. She paused. Or I did. Ryan studied the documents, his mind automatically looking for patterns. 6 years ago, before everything fell apart, he'd been good at this, seeing the invisible threads that connected seemingly unrelated data points. It was what had made him valuable at Harrison and Cross, and it was exactly what had made him such a convenient scapegoat when the real criminals needed someone to blame. You said someone you trust is destroying this from the inside, Ryan said slowly. But you don't actually trust any of them anymore, do you? Elena's jaw tightened. No, I don't. Then why haven't you fired all of them and started over? Because I can't prove anything. And if I'm wrong, if I burn my entire leadership team on suspicion alone, I'll destroy the company myself. The board would remove me. The acquisition would collapse. Everything I've built would be gone. She looked at him, and for the first time, Ryan saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes. I need proof, solid, undeniable evidence of who's behind this. And I need it before the final acquisition vote in 6 weeks. If this sabotage continues, the Meridian board will walk away. And if that happens, Voss Industries will be crippled. Our stock will crash. Our competitors will circle like sharks. And you'll lose everything, Ryan finished. Yes. The rain had softened to a steady drum against the window. Ryan got up and put on water for tea, a habit from leaner times, when tea was cheaper than coffee and lasted longer. I still don't understand what you think I can do, he said, his back to her. You need investigators, forensic accountants, security experts, not a watchmaker. I need someone invisible. Ryan turned. Elena stood, moving to the window. Everyone in my world knows me, knows my team. If I bring in another security firm, word will spread within hours. The saboteur will go quiet, cover their tracks, and I'll never find them. I need someone who can move through my company without attracting attention. Someone smart enough to see patterns others miss. Someone who has no connection to my world and no reason to be loyal to anyone but me. You want me to go undercover in a billion-dollar corporation? Yes. That's insane. Probably. Ryan poured hot water over tea bags in 2 chipped mugs. He brought them to the table and sat down, cradling the warmth in his hands. Even if I agreed, which I haven't, how would you explain me? You can't just bring a random watchmaker into your company without raising suspicions. Elena pulled out her phone and made a call. Marcus, I need you to create a personnel file for a new facilities consultant. Background in industrial operations, previous work in manufacturing efficiency. Yes, I'll send you the details. Tomorrow morning. She ended the call. You'll be hired as a third-party consultant reviewing our operational efficiency. It's boring enough that nobody will pay attention, but it gives you access to all our facilities, meetings, and personnel. You can observe without being observed. And if someone checks my background, your background will be perfect. I have people who are very good at creating legends. Ryan sipped his tea, buying time to think. This was madness. 6 years ago, he'd have been destroyed by getting involved in corporate games he didn't fully understand. Now this woman wanted him to walk back into that world, a world even more dangerous and complex. But he'd made a promise, and Elena had kept his watch. I have conditions, he said finally. Elena raised an eyebrow. You're not exactly in a position to negotiate, Mr. Hale. I'm calling in a debt you agreed to without conditions. Then consider this the payment plan. Ryan met her gaze steadily. First condition, total transparency. You tell me everything, every detail, every suspicion, every piece of information you have. No holding back because you think I can't handle it or don't need to know. Elena nodded slowly. Agreed. Second, if I find proof of who's behind this, you act on it immediately. No hesitation, no second guessing. You trusted me enough to bring me in. Trust me enough to finish it. Agreed. Third, when this is over, we're done. The debt is paid in full. You don't come back. You don't call. We go back to being strangers who once helped each other. Something flickered across Elena's face, hurt, maybe, or disappointment, but she nodded. Agreed. Ryan took a deep breath. Then I'll do it. Elena extended her hand across the table. Her grip was firm, her skin cold from the rain. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Ryan released her hand. If your instincts are right, and someone in your inner circle is doing this, they're dangerous, smart, connected. When I expose them, they'll fight back. And I've been through that fight before. It doesn't end well for people like me. This time will be different. Will it? Elena picked up the old watch from the table, the one that had started all of this. She turned it over, running her thumb across the cracked crystal. 10 years ago, you saved my life. I was 20 years old, running away from my father's house with nothing but the clothes on my back and a bag of stolen jewelry I planned to sell. I'd crashed my car trying to lose his security team. I was bleeding out in a ditch, and the only thing I could think was that I'd die without ever being free of him. She looked up, and Ryan saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Tears she refused to let fall. Then you stopped. A complete stranger who owed me nothing. You called for help. You stayed. And when I asked you for a promise, delirious, probably dying, you gave it without hesitation. You gave me hope that there were still good people in the world, people who help because it's right, not because there's something in it for them. Elena set the watch down gently between them. That hope kept me alive through the worst years of my life. It kept me fighting when my father tried to destroy me for leaving. It kept me going when I was building my company from nothing. And now, when I'm facing the greatest threat to everything I've built, that same hope brought me here. To you. She stood, pulling her coat back on. So yes, Mr. Hale, this time will be different. Because this time, you won't be alone. But after Elena left, Ryan sat in his workshop for a long time, staring at the old watch. The rain had stopped. The city was quiet again. He thought about his son, Ethan, 7 years old now, living with his ex-wife Sarah across town. Ryan saw him every other weekend, supervised visits because Sarah didn't trust him anymore. Nobody did, after the scandal. He thought about the life he'd built in the ruins of his old one, small, safe, invisible. And he thought about the promise he'd made to a dying girl on a dark highway, never expecting it would come back like this. His phone rang. An unknown number. Mr. Hale? A man's voice, professional and crisp. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm Ms. Voss's chief of staff. I'll be emailing you briefing materials tonight. Your first day at Voss Industries is tomorrow at 9 a.m. A car will pick you up at 8:30. Please wear business casual. And Mr. Hale? Yes? Ms. Voss believes in you. Don't make her regret it. The line went dead. Ryan looked around his apartment, his sanctuary, his hiding place, his prison. In 12 hours, he would walk back into the world that had chewed him up and spit him out, back into corporate towers and conference rooms and the subtle warfare of people who smiled while planning your destruction. But this time, he had something he didn't have before, someone who believed in him. Ryan picked up the broken watch and held it to his ear, still silent, still frozen at 11:47. Some things couldn't be fixed, but some promises had to be kept. The email arrived at midnight. Ryan sat at his laptop, a battered old machine that took 3 minutes to boot up, and opened the attachments Marcus Chen had sent. There were dozens of files, organizational charts, financial reports, personnel profiles, security protocols, and a detailed dossier on each member of Elena's executive team. He started with the inner circle, the 7 people who had access to everything. James Corvus, chief financial officer, 54 years old, Harvard MBA. 23 years at Voss Industries, the last 5 as CFO. Married, 3 children. Lived in a historic brownstone in the Heights, known for being meticulous, conservative, and loyal to a fault. Elena's notes said, "James has been with the company longer than I have. My father trusted him completely. I've never had reason to doubt him, but he has access to every financial detail of the Meridian deal." Patricia Lowell, Chief Operating Officer, 49 years old. Stanford Engineering degree, MBA from Wharton. 8 years at Voss Industries. Divorced, no children. Reputation as a brilliant strategist but ruthless manager. Elena's notes. Patricia runs the company's day-to-day operations. She's efficient, effective, and absolutely indispensable. She also has the ambition to run her own company someday. Would she sabotage this deal to weaken me? David Song, General Counsel, 42 years old, Yale Law, 6 years at Voss. Married to a federal prosecutor. 2 adopted children, known for being cautious, ethical, almost paranoid about compliance. Elena's notes. David reviews every contract, every agreement, every legal document. If someone is altering contracts, they'd need to either bypass him or get his cooperation. I can't imagine him being complicit, but I've been wrong before. Rebecca Tarn, Head of Strategy. 38 years old, Oxford PhD in economics, 4 years at Voss after a decade at McKinsey. Single, lives alone. Brilliant analytical mind. Elena's notes. Rebecca designed the entire Meridian acquisition strategy. She knows every weakness, every opportunity, every risk. If she wanted to sabotage it, she'd know exactly how. Victor Huang, Chief Technology Officer, 36 years old, MIT dropout, who built 3 successful startups before joining Voss Industries 3 years ago. Married to his college sweetheart, 1 daughter. Reputation as a maverick genius who doesn't play political games. Elena's notes. Victor cares more about technology than business. He opposed the Meridian acquisition at first, arguing we should develop our own quantum encryption instead of buying it. Could he be sabotaging a deal he never believed in? Lisa Park, VP of Communications, 44 years old. Northwestern journalism degree, 15 years in corporate communications, widow, 1 son in college. Loyal, discreet, excellent at managing public perception. Elena's notes. Lisa controls all our public messaging. She could leak information to the press and make it look natural, but why? She has no obvious motive. Samantha Reeves, executive assistant, 29 years old, NYU graduate, 5 years at Voss Industries, the last 2 as Elena's EA. Engaged to a teacher. No obvious red flags. Elena's notes. Sam sees everything. She manages my calendar, handles my correspondence, sits in on confidential meetings. She could be passing information without even realizing it, or very deliberately. I want to trust her, but I can't afford to. Ryan read through each profile 3 times, making notes, looking for patterns. All successful, all competent, all with apparent motives, or none at all. This was going to be harder than he thought. But sit. The car arrived at 8:30 sharp. Ryan barely recognized himself in the mirror. He'd borrowed a sport coat from the thrift store, paired it with his only decent pair of slacks, and a shirt that was only slightly wrinkled. He looked like what he was supposed to be, a mid-level consultant who'd seen better days. The driver was silent, professional. The car was a black sedan that probably cost more than Ryan had earned in the past 2 years. Voss Industries headquarters occupied a glass tower in the financial district. 42 stories of steel and ambition reflecting the morning sun like a blade. Ryan felt his stomach tighten as they pulled up to the entrance. Marcus Chen met him in the lobby, a man in his early 40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of calm efficiency that came from managing chaos for a living. "Mr. Hale, welcome to Voss Industries." His handshake was brief but firm. "I'll get you processed through security and show you to your temporary office. Ms. Voss will meet with you briefly this morning to discuss your consultancy scope." Ryan followed him through security, a retinal scan, temporary badge, visitor log, and up to the 37th floor. The elevator was so smooth Ryan couldn't tell they were moving. "A few things you should know. Marcus said as they walked through corridors of glass and steel. Your cover story is that you're reviewing operational efficiency across our manufacturing facilities. It's boring enough that most people will avoid you. Your office is intentionally located near the executive wing, which gives you a reason to be in that area without raising suspicions. How many people know the real reason I'm here? 2. Miss Voss and myself. Not even her security team? Especially not her security team. The fewer people who know, the safer this operation stays. Marcus stopped at a small office, barely more than a closet with a desk and a window. This is yours. I've stocked it with reports, facility access credentials, and background materials to make your cover legitimate. You'll start by observing our manufacturing operations, but feel free to move around the building. Ask questions. Be curious. That's what consultants do. Ryan set down his bag, containing nothing but a notebook and 2 pens, and looked out the window. From here, he could see half the city. Mr. Chen, can I ask you something? Marcus, please. Marcus, do you know who's behind the sabotage? Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. If I did, they'd already be gone. I've served Ms. Voss for 4 years. I would do anything to protect her and this company. But I'm as blind as she is right now. Whoever is doing this is very, very good at hiding. Do you think it's someone in her inner circle? I think it has to be, but I don't want to believe it. These are people I work with every day, people I respect. Marcus checked his watch. Ms. Voss will see you in 10 minutes. Conference room B, down the hall. Don't be late. After Marcus left, Ryan stood at the window, looking down at the streets below. Tiny people rushing to tiny jobs, living tiny lives. Safe lives. He missed it already. Conference room B was all glass walls and a table that could seat 20. Elena sat at the far end, reviewing documents on a tablet. She looked different in her element, more commanding, more distant. The vulnerable woman from last night was gone, replaced by the CEO who ran a $70 billion empire. Mr. Hale. She didn't look up. Close the door and activate the privacy screen. Ryan found the control panel and pressed the button Marcus had shown him. The glass walls frosted over, blocking outside view. Sit. He sat. Elena finally looked up, and for just a second he saw recognition flash across her face, as if she were surprised to find the same person from last night sitting across from her. Your background is in place, she said, all business. As far as anyone knows, you're Adam Hale, operational efficiency consultant from Davidson Strategic Partners. You have a credential portfolio, a work history, and references that will check out if anyone looks, which they will. She slid a folder across the table. That contains your official project scope, timeline, and deliverables. You'll be reviewing our manufacturing operations and suggesting efficiency improvements. It's real work, and I expect real recommendations. Your reports will be circulated to the executive team, which gives you legitimate reason to interact with all of them. Ryan opened the folder, scanning the documents. It was thorough, detailed, and completely convincing. Your real job, Elena continued, is to observe. Watch how people interact. Notice who talks to whom. Pay attention to behavior changes, stress patterns, unusual activities. Most importantly, look for access patterns. Whoever is altering documents and leaking information has to be accessing systems at specific times. Those patterns will reveal them. You want me to spy on your own executives. I want you to find the truth. Ryan closed the folder. And when I do, what happens then? Then I act. Immediately. Decisively. Elena's eyes were hard. I don't tolerate betrayal, Mr. Hale. When you give me proof, I'll end whoever is behind this. There was something in her voice, a coldness that made Ryan remember that this woman hadn't become a billionaire CEO by being kind. She'd fought her way up from nothing, and she'd learned to be ruthless. I need you to understand something, Ryan said carefully. When people are desperate or ambitious enough to sabotage their own company, they're dangerous. If they realize I'm onto them, they'll come after me, after you, after anyone they see as a threat. I know. I've been through this before. 6 years ago, when I was blamed for crimes I didn't commit, the people who framed me destroyed my entire life. My career, my reputation, my marriage, my relationship with my son. They took everything and they didn't hesitate. Are you prepared for that possibility? Elena stood, walking to the frosted window. Mr. Hale, I've been fighting people who wanted to destroy me since I was 20 years old. My own father tried to have me declared incompetent when I refused to come back to his house. Competitors have tried to steal my technology, my clients, my employees. The business world is filled with people who smile at you while planning your destruction. She turned back to him. But I'm still here, still standing, still winning, because I learned a long time ago that in this world, you either fight or you die. And I refuse to die. Ryan believed her. When do I start? Now. Your first facility tour is scheduled for this afternoon. James Corvus will be showing you around personally. He's been informed you're here to help improve efficiency and reduce costs. Use the opportunity to observe him. Elena deactivated the privacy screen. The glass cleared, revealing the hallway beyond. One more thing, Mr. Hale. In public, we are strictly professional. Consultant and CEO. Nothing more. If people think you have special access to me, they'll watch you more closely. Can you handle that? I've spent the last 6 years being invisible. I think I can manage a few more weeks. Something that might have been a smile flickered across Elena's face. Then let's begin. 1. James Corvus was exactly what Ryan expected. Polished, professional, and utterly unreadable. They met in the lobby of Building C, one of Voss Industries' main manufacturing facilities. Corvus wore a perfectly tailored suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades at the top of the corporate food chain. Mr. Hale, welcome to Voss Industries. His handshake was firm without being aggressive. I understand you'll be reviewing our operational efficiency. I'm happy to show you around our facilities and answer any questions you might have. They walked through the manufacturing floor, a vast space filled with precision machinery and workers in clean suits. Corvus explained the production process with the ease of someone who'd given this tour 100 times. Ryan asked appropriate questions, took notes, and observed. Corvus checked his phone 3 times during the tour. Each time his expression flickered, just for a second, before returning to professional neutrality. The 3rd time, he excused himself to take a call, stepping away for 2 minutes. When he returned, he seemed distracted. Everything all right? Ryan asked. Just bored politics. Corvus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The joys of corporate leadership. You'll find that most of our challenges aren't on the manufacturing floor, they're in the boardroom. They continued the tour, but Ryan's mind was cataloging details. The phone calls, the distraction, the brief moment of stress that Corvus couldn't quite hide. Was it guilt? Or just the normal pressure of a CFO managing a billion-dollar company? After the tour, Corvus invited Ryan to his office for coffee. It was a large space on the 39th floor, with a view almost as good as Elena's. Family photos on the desk, degrees on the wall, everything carefully curated to project success and stability. So, Mr. Hale, what brings you to Voss Industries? Corvus asked, pouring coffee from an expensive-looking machine. Your background is in manufacturing, but you've been out of the corporate world for a while. Ryan had prepared for this. Personal reasons. I needed to step away for a few years, but I missed the work. When Davidson Strategic offered me this consultancy, it seemed like a good opportunity to ease back in. And you worked at Harrison and Cross Financial. Before that, various manufacturing operations roles. Nothing as sophisticated as what you have here. Corvus nodded, but Ryan saw the flicker of recognition. Harrison and Cross. The scandal. Anyone in finance would remember it. Well, Corvus said carefully, we're glad to have your expertise. Lord knows we could use some efficiency improvements. Between you and me, this Meridian acquisition has everyone stretched thin. I heard about that. Significant deal. Significant and complicated. Corvus set down his coffee cup. $15 billion, thousands of employees, massive technology integration challenges, and every step forward seems to bring 3 steps back. It's exhausting. Sounds frustrating. You have no idea. For just a moment, Corvus's professional mask slipped. Sometimes I wonder if it's even worth it. The headaches, the pressure, the constant problems. I've given this company 23 years of my life. Maybe it's time to think about retirement. Ryan leaned forward slightly. You'd walk away from a deal this big? Corvus seemed to realize he'd said too much. The mask came back up. Just thinking out loud. Ignore me. Too much coffee and not enough sleep. But Ryan had seen it. exhaustion, stress, and something else. Resignation, the look of a man who'd already decided to give up. Over the next 3 days, Ryan met with each member of Elena's inner circle. Patricia Lowell, the COO, was sharp, efficient, and clearly didn't have time for consultants. She answered his questions with military precision, gave him 30 minutes exactly, and dismissed him with barely concealed impatience. Ryan noted that she seemed stressed, but in the normal way of someone managing impossible deadlines, not the guilty stress of someone hiding secrets. David Song, the general counsel, was cautious and thorough. He explained the legal complexities of the Meridian acquisition with the patience of a teacher, asked Ryan intelligent questions about manufacturing compliance, and seemed genuinely interested in efficiency improvements. Ryan couldn't detect any deception, but lawyers were good at hiding things. Rebecca Tarn, head of strategy, was brilliant and intimidating. She laid out the acquisition strategy with the precision of a chess master explaining a complex gambit. Ryan noticed she had access to every detail, every weakness, every potential failure point. If she wanted to sabotage the deal, she'd know exactly where to strike. Victor Huang, the CTO, was refreshingly blunt. "I still think this acquisition is a mistake," he told Ryan over lunch in the cafeteria. "We should be developing our own quantum encryption, not buying someone else's. But Elena wants it, so here we are. I'll make it work, but I won't pretend to be happy about it." Lisa Park, VP of Communications, was warm and professional. She talked about managing public perception, controlling narratives, and protecting the company's reputation. Ryan noticed she seemed genuinely loyal to Elena, but loyalty could be faked. Samantha Reeves, Elena's executive assistant, was young, smart, and overwhelmed. "I feel like I'm drowning," she admitted during a brief conversation in the break room. "Every day there's a crisis. Every email is urgent. Elena runs at 100 miles an hour, and I'm just trying to keep up. But I love this job. I love working for her. She's incredible." Ryan observed them all, watched their patterns, noted their stress levels, their access points, their potential motives, and he found nothing. No smoking guns, no obvious guilt, just 7 extremely competent people doing incredibly demanding jobs under enormous pressure. On Friday evening, Ryan met with Elena in her office after everyone else had gone home. "What have you found?" she asked. "Nothing concrete, but I have observations." Ryan pulled out his notes. "James Corvus is exhausted. He's thinking about retirement. I think he's burned out from the pressure, but I can't rule out that he might want the deal to fail, so he has an excuse to leave. James has always been loyal. People change when they're tired enough." Elena nodded grimly. "Continue." "Patricia Lowell is stressed but focused. She's ruthlessly efficient, which means if she wanted to sabotage something, she'd be good at it. But I didn't see any signs of deception. David Song is careful, almost paranoid about compliance. If someone is altering legal documents, they're either doing it behind his back or they've convinced him it's legitimate." Ryan flipped through his notes. "Rebecca Tarn knows every detail of the acquisition strategy. She has the knowledge to sabotage it perfectly. But I can't find a motive. Unless she wants the deal to fail so she can say, 'I told you so,' and advance her own position." "Rebecca is ambitious," Elena agreed, "but she's also smart enough to know that the company's failure would hurt her career, not help it." Victor Huang openly admits he opposed the acquisition. He's the most transparent about his skepticism, which either makes him innocent or very clever. Lisa Park controls all public messaging. She could leak information and make it look like normal press coverage. And Samantha has access to literally everything. Ryan set down his notes. "Here's the problem. Any of them could be doing this. All of them have access, opportunity, and at least theoretical motive. But I haven't seen any actual evidence of guilt." Elena stood, pacing to the window. Night had fallen over the city, and the light spread out below them like a field of stars. "So we're nowhere. Not nowhere. I'm establishing patterns, watching behavior. Eventually, whoever is behind this will make a mistake. They'll access something at the wrong time, or their stress will spike at a revealing moment, or they'll slip up in conversation. And if they don't, if they're too careful?" Ryan didn't have a good answer for that. Elena turned back to him, and in the dim light of her office, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the girl he'd found bleeding on a highway 10 years ago. "I'm scared, Ryan." It was the first time she'd used his first name. I've built this company from nothing. It's everything I have. And someone I trust is trying to take it away. And I can't see who. Ryan stood, crossing to where she stood by the window. We'll find them, I promise. You shouldn't make promises you might not be able to keep. Seems to be a habit of mine. Elena almost smiled. Then her phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. What is it? Another document leak. The Meridian Board just received confidential internal projections that show our acquisition strategy in the worst possible light, projections that were supposed to be secure. She looked at Ryan, and he saw fury in her eyes. Whoever did this just moved up their timeline. They're trying to kill the deal now, before we can stop them. Ryan's mind raced. Who had access to those projections? All 7 of them, plus Marcus and myself. When were they created? Yesterday, Rebecca prepared them for an internal strategy session scheduled for Monday. So someone accessed them within the last 24 hours and sent them to Meridian's board. Elena pulled up security logs on her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. Access logs show multiple people opened the file. James, Patricia, Rebecca, David, Victor, all within normal business hours. Nothing suspicious. Unless one of them copied it and sent it from outside the system. We monitor external communications. Nothing flagged. Ryan thought hard. What about internal communications? Email sent to someone else who then forwarded it externally. Elena's eyes widened. We don't monitor internal emails that closely. They're supposed to be privileged. She dove back into the logs, pulling up email records. Ryan watched over her shoulder as she filtered, searched, and tracked. Then she stopped. There. Her voice was barely a whisper. On the screen, an email trail. The confidential projections sent from Rebecca Tarn's account to an external email address, sent at 11:47 p.m. last night, after everyone had gone home. Ryan's blood went cold. 11:47. Elena looked at him, confused. What? The watch, the one you kept, it stopped at 11:47. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Elena shook her head. It's a coincidence. Is it? She turned back to the screen, pulling up more records. This email account, it's not one I recognize. Let me trace it. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Then she froze. What? Ryan asked. Elena's face had gone pale. The account. It's registered to a shell company, and the shell company... She pulled up more records. The shell company is owned by... The office door opened. Both of them spun around. Marcus Chen stood in the doorway, his normally calm expression replaced by something harder, something dangerous. In his hand was a gun. I'm sorry, Ms. Voss, he said quietly, but I can't let you continue this investigation. The world narrowed to 3 points: Marcus's gun, Elena's frozen face, and Ryan's thundering heartbeat. Marcus? Elena's voice was steady, but Ryan could hear the tremor underneath. What are you doing? Marcus stepped into the office and closed the door behind him with his foot, never taking his eyes, or the weapon, off them. His normally impeccable composure had cracked, revealing something desperate beneath. I'm doing what I should have done weeks ago, he said, ending this before you destroy everything. Ryan's mind raced through possibilities. The office was on the 39th floor. No escape through the windows. The door was behind Marcus. The desk was between them, but it wouldn't stop a bullet. He shifted slightly, positioning himself between Elena and the gun. Don't. Marcus's voice hardened. Don't be a hero, Mr. Hale. You've already done enough damage. I haven't done anything. You came here. You started asking questions. You made her suspicious again. Marcus's hand tightened on the gun. Everything was going perfectly until you showed up. Elena moved forward slightly, and Ryan felt her hand grip the back of his jacket, either to steady herself or to stop him from doing something stupid. The shell company, she said, her CEO voice returning, the one that owns the email account. You created it. 3 years ago, long before any of this started. Marcus's expression twisted with something like regret. I always knew I might need insurance, a way to communicate that couldn't be traced back to me. I just never thought I'd have to use it against you. Against me? Elena's voice rose. Marcus, I trusted you. I brought you into my inner circle. I gave you access to everything. And I've been loyal. The words burst out of him. For 4 years, I've served you faithfully. I've protected you. I've managed every crisis, every threat, every impossible situation you've faced. I've sacrificed everything for this company. For you. Then why? Elena's voice broke. Why betray me now? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because you were going to destroy everything we built. This Meridian acquisition. It's a poison pill, Elena. Can't you see that? Their technology is flawed. Their financials are cooked. The whole deal is a trap set by your competitors to cripple you. Ryan's mind clicked pieces into place. You weren't sabotaging the deal. You were trying to stop it. Finally, someone understands. Marcus's eyes flickered to Ryan. I tried to warn her, subtly at first. I altered documents to show the risks. I leaked information to make the board cautious. I did everything I could to slow this disaster down without openly defying her. You had no right, Elena started. I had every right. Marcus's composure shattered completely. I'm the one who sees the whole picture. I'm the one who protects you from your own blind spots. And this acquisition is the biggest blind spot you've ever had. You're so focused on beating your competitors, on proving you're the best, that you can't see you're walking into a trap. Elena's hand released Ryan's jacket. She stepped around him, facing Marcus directly despite the gun. So you decided to destroy my deal, leak my strategies, undermine my authority, all while pretending to be loyal. I am loyal. That's the point. Marcus's voice cracked. Everything I did was to save you from yourself. By taking away my choice? By manipulating me? Yes. The word echoed in the office. Because you wouldn't listen. You never listen when you've decided you're right. Just like you didn't listen when I warned you about the Joe contract. Just like you didn't listen when I said the European expansion was premature. You make decisions and expect everyone to fall in line, consequences be damned. Ryan watched the dynamic shift. This wasn't just about the acquisition. This was years of resentment, frustration, and unspoken conflict finally exploding. Marcus, Ryan said carefully, put the gun down. Let's talk about this. We're past talking, Mr. Hale. Are we? Because it seems like you wanted to talk. That's why you came here instead of just disappearing. You want her to understand. Marcus's eyes flickered with something, hope, maybe, or the desperate need to be heard. You don't know what it's like, he said, his voice dropping. Working for someone brilliant and impossible. Someone who's always 3 steps ahead but occasionally 10 steps wrong. Loving the work but hating the helplessness when you see disaster coming and can't stop it. Loving the work? Elena's voice was quiet now. Or loving something else? The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's face transformed, pain, longing, and shame all at once. Don't. How long, Marcus? How long have you felt this way? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Ryan understood then. The loyalty that went beyond professional, the protection that bordered on obsession, the betrayal born not from greed but from something far more complicated. 4 years, Marcus whispered, since the day I started working for you. But I never said anything, never crossed that line. I kept it professional. I did my job. His voice broke. I just wanted you to be safe, to succeed, to not destroy yourself chasing something that will ruin you. Elena's expression softened, just slightly. And you thought sabotaging my deal was the way to protect me? I thought if I could just slow it down, make the board cautious enough to demand more due diligence, buy enough time for you to see the truth, then you'd thank me. You'd understand I was trying to help. Instead, I brought in Ryan. Instead, you brought in a stranger and trusted him more than you trusted me. The bitterness in Marcus's voice was sharp enough to cut. 4 years of loyalty, and you believed a watchmaker over me. Ryan felt the weight of that accusation, but he also saw the flaw in Marcus's logic. She trusted me because I have no stake in this, Ryan said. No career advancement, no personal agenda, just a debt to repay. You loved her, Marcus. That's not objectivity, that's the opposite. Love? Marcus laughed harshly. You think this is about love? It's about preventing a disaster. Then show us the proof, Elena said. If Meridian is really a trap, you must have evidence. Show us, and we'll look at it. properly, without manipulation or sabotage. For a moment, Marcus seemed to waver. His hand lowered slightly, the gun no longer pointing directly at them. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. No, it's too late. What's too late? Ryan asked. The Meridian board just called an emergency vote. They've received the leaked documents, all of them. The altered contracts, the inflated projections, the security concerns. They're going to reject the acquisition tomorrow morning. Elena's face went pale. Tomorrow? The vote wasn't scheduled for another month. They accelerated it because of the leaks, because of the evidence of internal sabotage. Marcus looked at her, and his eyes were filled with something like triumph mixed with regret. I forced their hand. The deal is dead, Elena. You're safe. Safe? Elena's voice rose. Marcus, if Meridian rejects us publicly, our stock will crash. Our competitors will know we're vulnerable. The board will question my leadership. You haven't saved me. You've destroyed me. Better destroyed than dead. What are you talking about? Marcus's hand tightened on the gun again. Meridian isn't just a bad deal. It's a targeted attack. Your father set it up. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Elena took a step back, her face draining of color. My father is dead. Your father died 6 months ago. This deal started being planned 2 years ago. Marcus pulled out his phone with his free hand, swiping through files. I found the connection 3 months ago. Shell companies, hidden board members, financial ties that all lead back to your father's network. He built this trap before he died, Elena. His last gift to the daughter who defied him. He held up the phone, showing a web of corporate connections, financial flows, and hidden relationships. Even from a distance, Ryan could see it was complex, detailed, and potentially damning. If you complete this acquisition, Marcus continued, Meridian's hidden debts and legal liabilities will transfer to Voss Industries. Within a year, you'll be bankrupt. Everything you built will collapse. Your father wins, even from the grave. Elena stared at the evidence, her hands trembling. Why didn't you just tell me? I tried. I brought you concerns. I flagged risks. I asked for more due diligence. And you dismissed everything because you were so focused on winning, on proving you were better than him, that you couldn't see he'd played you perfectly. Ryan's mind raced through the implications. If Marcus was telling the truth, then Elena was walking into a trap. But if he was lying, or if his evidence was manipulated to support his own narrative, then he'd just destroyed a legitimate deal based on paranoid speculation. Let me see the evidence, Ryan said. All of it. Not just what you're showing us now, the raw data, the original documents, everything. Marcus shook his head. There's no time. The vote is tomorrow. It's over. Then what's the gun for? Ryan pressed. If the deal is already dead, why threaten us? Because you're going to try to save it. You're going to call the Meridian board, explain away the leaks, convince them it's sabotage. Elena never gives up, even when she should. Marcus's voice hardened. I can't let you do that. So what's your plan? Elena asked coldly. Kill us? Kidnap us until after the vote? Think this through, Marcus. You pull that trigger and you go to prison. Everything you did to protect me becomes meaningless. I'm not going to kill you. Marcus's voice was sad. I'm just going to make sure you can't interfere until it's too late. I've already called building security. They're on their way up. I'm going to tell them I caught you meeting with a corporate spy, Mr. Hale here, who I've discovered is actually working for a competitor. By the time you straighten it out, the Meridian vote will be over. Ryan's stomach dropped. It was actually a decent plan. Messy, desperate, but potentially effective. They won't believe you, Elena said. Won't they? A mysterious consultant with a suspicious background, access to sensitive information, and a convenient cover story? A CEO so obsessed with a deal that she's making dangerous decisions? I've already planted the evidence, Elena. Emails from Mr. Hale's account to competitor firms. Financial transfers that look like payments. It's all there. He'd been planning this for a while. This wasn't a desperate last move, it was a carefully constructed exit strategy. You've thought of everything, Ryan said. I had to. I'm protecting someone who refuses to protect herself. The elevator dinged in the distance. Security was coming. Elena looked at Ryan, and in her eyes, he saw a question. Do we fight? Do we run? Do we trust that the truth will win? Ryan made a decision. Marcus, he said, you're making a mistake. Not about the deal. Maybe you're right about that. But about this. About using force and manipulation to get what you want. About deciding what's best for someone else without giving them the choice. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. That's what separates protection from control. Ryan took a step forward. Put down the gun. Show us your evidence. Let Elena make an informed decision. If your proof is real, she'll listen. She's not your enemy, Marcus. She's the person you're trying to save. Marcus's hand shook. For a moment, Ryan thought he might actually do it, might lower the weapon and choose trust over force. Then the office door opened. 2 security guards entered, their hands on their holsters. Mr. Chan, we got your call about an intruder. Everything happened at once. Marcus turned toward the guards, the gun swinging away from Elena and Ryan. Elena lunged for her desk, reaching for something Ryan couldn't see. And Ryan, acting on instinct honed from years of fighting his way back from nothing, closed the distance to Marcus in 3 quick steps. His hand caught Marcus's wrist, twisting it upward. The gun fired, a deafening crack that sent both security guards diving for cover. Ryan drove his shoulder into Marcus's chest, slamming him against the wall. The gun clattered to the floor. For 3 seconds, they struggled. Marcus was stronger than he looked, driven by desperation and 4 years of pent-up emotion. He got an arm free and threw a wild punch that caught Ryan on the jaw. Stars exploded across Ryan's vision, but he didn't let go. He'd been in fights before, back alley confrontations when he'd had nothing left to lose. He knew how to take a hit and keep moving. He swept Marcus's legs, bringing him down hard. They hit the floor together, the impact driving the air from both their lungs. Ryan pinned Marcus's arms, his knee on the other man's chest. Stop, he gasped. It's over. Marcus thrashed once more, then went still. His eyes were wide, breathing ragged, all the fight draining out of him at once. The security guards were on their feet now, weapons drawn, shouting commands Ryan barely processed. Elena was talking rapidly on her phone, calling someone, probably the police, probably more security, probably everyone. Ryan looked down at Marcus and saw not a villain, but a broken man who'd loved the wrong way and lost everything because of it. I was trying to save her, Marcus whispered. I know, Ryan said, but she didn't need saving. She needed the truth. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They took Marcus away in handcuffs, his perfect composure finally, completely shattered. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just walked out of Elena's office with his head down, a man who'd bet everything on being right and lost anyway. The security guards gave statements. The office became a crime scene. Detectives asked questions Ryan answered mechanically, his jaw throbbing where Marcus had hit him. Through it all, Elena stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, her expression unreadable. When everyone finally left and they were alone again, Ryan found ice in the break room and held it against his jaw. You should go to a hospital, Elena said quietly. I've had worse. That's not reassuring. Ryan smiled despite the pain. Probably not. Elena sat down at her desk, looking at the screen that still showed Marcus's evidence, the web of connections tying Meridian systems to her father's network. Is it real? Ryan asked. The trap he described? I don't know. Maybe. My father was certainly capable of it. She scrolled through the documents, her expression hardening. But Marcus manipulated this data too. I can see his fingerprints all over it. Truth mixed with exaggeration, mixed with outright fabrication. He built a narrative that justified his actions. Does that mean Meridian is legitimate? It means I need to do what I should have done months ago. Real due diligence, independent verification. No assumptions, no shortcuts, no trusting my own brilliance. She looked up at Ryan. Marcus was right about one thing. I get so focused on winning that I stop seeing the risks. That's called confidence. It's why you're successful. It's also called arrogance, and it almost destroyed me tonight. Ryan set down the ice, wincing as he moved his jaw. What happens now? Now I call an emergency board meeting. I present everything, the sabotage, Marcus's actions, his evidence about Meridian, all of it. I let them decide whether to proceed with the acquisition or kill it. She smiled bitterly. Transparency. Isn't that what you demanded? Total transparency? I meant with me, not the whole board. Same principle applies. If I can't trust my own board with the truth, Then I shouldn't be CEO. She stood, gathering files, already shifting into crisis management mode. Ryan recognized the transformation. He'd seen it in himself, back when he'd had a career. The ability to compartmentalize trauma and keep functioning. Useful, also dangerous. Elena, he said, what Marcus said, about loving you. Did you know? She paused, her back to him. I suspected. There were moments, looks, small gestures, the way he protected me a little too fiercely. But I told myself I was imagining it, that he was just a dedicated employee. Because it was easier than dealing with it? Because I needed him, his competence, his loyalty, his ability to manage the chaos of running this company. I didn't want to lose that by acknowledging something that would make our professional relationship impossible. She turned to face him, and Ryan saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, tears she refused to let fall. I used him, not consciously, not maliciously, but I used his feelings to keep him close and effective. And now he's going to prison because I was too afraid to be honest with him. He made his own choices. Based on false hope, I never bothered to correct. Ryan crossed to her, and without thinking, pulled her into a hug. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, her careful composure finally breaking. She didn't cry, but she shook, her breath coming in ragged gasps. 4 years of pressure and loneliness and impossible expectations all releasing at once. Ryan held her, this brilliant, damaged, terrifying woman who'd once been a girl bleeding in a ditch, and understood something fundamental. They were both survivors, both people who'd built walls to protect themselves from a world that had tried to destroy them. Both so good at being strong that they'd forgotten how to be human. I'm scared, Elena whispered against his shoulder. The board vote is tomorrow. If Meridian rejects us publicly, or if my own board loses confidence in me, everything I've built collapses. And I don't know if I can survive that again. You won't be alone this time. She pulled back, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. You're a consultant, Ryan. This isn't your fight. I made it my fight when I agreed to help you, and I don't walk away from promises. Something shifted in her expression. Even when keeping them might destroy you? Especially then. They stood there in the wreckage of her office, bullet hole in the wall, files scattered, the faint smell of gunpowder still in the air, and Ryan felt the weight of what he'd committed to. This wasn't just about repaying a decade-old debt anymore. It was about something deeper, something that scared him more than Marcus's gun had. He cared about her. Not as a stranger he'd once helped, but as a person, a complicated, brilliant, infuriating person who was fighting for survival in a world designed to crush people like them. We need to verify Marcus's evidence, Ryan said, stepping back before the moment could become something neither of them was ready for. Tonight, before the board meeting, if there's any truth to his claims about your father's trap, we need to know. Elena nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I have forensic accountants on retainer. I'll call them now. And I'll look at the raw data, the connections, the financial flows, the timeline. If it's manipulated, there will be inconsistencies. You can do that? I used to do it for a living, before I became a watchmaker. Ryan managed a smile despite his throbbing jaw. Turns out some skills don't fade. They worked through the night. Elena made calls, bringing in experts, demanding analysis, refusing to accept surface-level answers. Ryan dove into the data Marcus had compiled, tracing each connection, verifying each claim, looking for the truth beneath the manipulation. Around 3 in the morning, they found it. Marcus's evidence was real, but incomplete. There were connections between Meridian systems and companies in her father's network. There were hidden debts and legal liabilities that hadn't been properly disclosed. The trap was real, but it wasn't fatal. Look at this, Ryan said, pulling up a series of financial documents. The debts are significant, but they're also collateralized. If we structure the acquisition differently, take on the assets but isolate the liabilities in a separate entity, we can neutralize the trap. Elena studied the numbers, her exhausted mind still processing complex financial structures. That would require renegotiating the entire deal. Can you do it? Maybe, if Meridian's board hasn't already decided to reject us. If my own board still trusts me. If we can move fast enough. That's a lot of ifs. That's my whole life. She rubbed her eyes. But you're right. This is the path forward. Acknowledge the risks, restructure the deal, turn my father's trap into an opportunity. She stood, gathering the analysis into a presentation. The board meeting is in 5 hours. I need to prepare. I'll help. You should sleep. Your face looks terrible. Ryan touched his swollen jaw and winced. Feels worse than it looks. Then it must be really bad. Elena actually smiled. Thank you, Ryan. For everything. For stopping Marcus. For seeing the truth in his lies. For not running away when a gun appeared. I'm too stupid to run. No, you're too loyal. It's different. She gathered her files and headed for the door, then paused. My father used to say that loyalty was weakness, that trusting people made you vulnerable. He built his empire on fear and control, and it made him powerful, and alone, and eventually dead. Elena looked back at Ryan. I don't want to end up like him, powerful and alone, so even though it terrifies me, I'm going to trust you, completely. The way I should have trusted Marcus with honesty instead of convenient blindness. I won't betray that trust. I know. That's why it terrifies me. Because if I'm wrong about you, I'll have nothing left. She left before Ryan could respond. He sat alone in her office as dawn began to break over the city, thinking about trust and loyalty and the promises that could save you or destroy you. Somewhere in the building, security was reviewing footage, filing reports, turning one night's chaos into bureaucratic documentation. Somewhere in the city, Marcus sat in a holding cell, his careful plans in ruins. Somewhere in corporate towers across the world, Elena's competitors were probably already hearing rumors of crisis at Voss Industries. And in 6 hours, a board meeting would determine whether everything Elena had built would survive or collapse. Ryan pulled out his phone and called his ex-wife. Ryan? It's 4 a.m. Is something wrong? No, I just wanted to hear your voice, and Ethan's if he's awake. He's not, and you sound terrible. What happened? Long story. Sarah, I need to ask you something. When we were married, before everything fell apart, did you ever trust me? Really trust me? Silence on the line. Then, once, before the scandal, before the accusations, when I thought I knew who you were. And after I didn't know what to believe. Everyone said you were guilty. The evidence seemed clear, and you were so angry, so defensive, that I couldn't see the man I'd married anymore. I was innocent. I know that now. But by the time I figured it out, we'd already destroyed each other. Ryan closed his eyes. I'm sorry. For not fighting harder to make you believe me, for letting my anger push you away. Why are you calling me at 4 a.m. to apologize for something that happened 6 years ago? Because I'm about to do something that might blow up my life again. And I realized I never properly apologized for the last time. Sarah's voice softened. What are you involved in, Ryan? Something good, I think, I hope, but it's complicated and dangerous and I might lose everything again. Then why do it? Because someone trusted me when they didn't have to, and I refuse to betray that trust, even if it costs me. He could hear Sarah's smile through the phone. There's the man I married, the one who stopped for strangers and kept promises and believed doing the right thing mattered. I'm not sure I'm that person anymore. You called me at 4 a.m. to apologize before walking into danger. You're exactly that person. You just forgot for a while. After they hung up, Ryan sat watching the sun rise over the city, thinking about the man he'd been and the man he was becoming. The board meeting was in 5 hours, and whatever happened, Ryan had decided he was seeing this through to the end. The boardroom filled slowly, like water rising toward a floodline. Ryan watched from the back corner where Elena had positioned him, close enough to observe, far enough to remain invisible. The board members arrived in pairs and trios, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern to barely concealed hostility. Word had spread about last night's incident, about Marcus's arrest, about guns and sabotage and a CEO who might be losing control. James Corvus entered first, looking older than he had just days ago. The news had hit him hard. His closest colleague arrested, his company in crisis. He took his seat at the long table without meeting anyone's eyes. Patricia Lowell arrived next, her usual efficiency replaced by sharp wariness. She scanned the room like a general assessing a battlefield, her gaze lingering on Ryan for a fraction of a second before dismissing him as irrelevant. David Song, Rebecca Tarn, Victor Huang, Lisa Park. They filed in one by one, the inner circle that had been thrown into chaos by Marcus's betrayal. Ryan studied each face, looking for signs of complicity or knowledge or guilt. He found only confusion and concern. The board members themselves were another matter entirely. 12 men and women who controlled billions in assets, who could make or break careers with a vote, who held Elena's future in their hands. Ryan recognized a few faces from the briefing materials: investors, industry veterans, people whose names carried weight in financial circles. At exactly 9 o'clock, Elena entered. She wore a navy suit that projected authority without arrogance, her hair pulled back severely, her expression composed. But Ryan saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she set down her presentation materials. She'd had maybe 2 hours of sleep. Her entire world had imploded less than 12 hours ago, and now she had to convince this room full of powerful people that she deserved to keep leading the company she'd built. "Good morning," Elena said, her voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know you've heard rumors about last night's events. I'm here to give you the truth." She activated the presentation screen and the first slide appeared. A photo of Marcus Chen, professional and smiling, from his company bio. Marcus Chen, my chief of staff for 4 years, was arrested last night for corporate sabotage, making terroristic threats, and attempted assault. He has confessed to systematically undermining the Meridian acquisition over the past 3 months by altering documents, leaking confidential information, and manipulating communications between our company and theirs. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Elena waited for silence before continuing. His motivation, as he explained it, was protection. He believed the Meridian acquisition was a trap set by my late father to destroy this company. And after analyzing his evidence through the night with independent forensic accountants, I can confirm that parts of his concern were legitimate. She clicked to the next slide, showing the web of corporate connections Marcus had uncovered. Meridian Systems does have hidden liabilities tied to entities in my father's network. The debts are real. The legal exposure is real. If we had proceeded with the acquisition as originally structured, those liabilities would have transferred to Voss Industries, potentially crippling us within 18 months. Ryan watched the board members' faces darken. This was worse than they'd imagined. However, Elena continued, her voice strengthening, Marcus's sabotage prevented us from discovering these issues through proper due diligence. Instead of bringing his concerns to this board, he took it upon himself to destroy the deal through deception and manipulation. His actions, while motivated by misguided loyalty, have created a crisis that threatens everything we've built. She clicked to another slide, this one showing financial projections and restructured deal terms. The Meridian board is meeting in 2 hours to vote on our acquisition offer. Based on the leaked documents and appearance of internal chaos, they are expected to reject our proposal. If that happens publicly, our stock will drop significantly. Our competitors will sense weakness, and our ability to pursue future acquisitions will be severely compromised. "Then we're finished," said Margaret Hayes, the board's vice chair. She was 72, sharp as a scalpel, and had never particularly liked Elena. "You've lost control of your own team, your deal is collapsing, and you want us to what? Trust that you can fix this?" Elena met her gaze without flinching. "No. I want you to decide whether this company continues under my leadership or whether you remove me and start over. But before you vote, I want you to see the complete picture." She clicked to the next slide, and Ryan recognized his own analysis from the night before, the restructured deal that could neutralize her father's trap. Working with Mr. Hale, the operational consultant I brought in to investigate the sabotage, I've identified a path forward. We can restructure the Meridian acquisition to isolate the hidden liabilities while preserving access to their quantum encryption technology. It requires renegotiating significant portions of the deal, convincing their board to give us another chance, and moving faster than this company has ever moved before. But it's possible. "On what timeline?" James Corvus asked quietly. 2 weeks. We present the restructured proposal to Meridian's board, demonstrate that we've identified and addressed their hidden liabilities, and show them that this acquisition benefits both companies rather than serving as a poison pill. Patricia Lowell leaned forward. "That's insane, renegotiating a $15 billion deal in 2 weeks? Even if Meridian agrees to hear us out, which they won't after last night's disaster, We don't have the resources or time to. We do if this board authorizes it, Elena's voice hardened. I'm asking for emergency powers to restructure this deal, full authority to negotiate terms, reallocate resources, and make binding commitments on behalf of Voss Industries. 2 weeks of total control to either save this acquisition or kill it properly. The room exploded. Board members talked over each other, voices rising in concern and anger. Margaret Hayes was on her feet, demanding to know if Elena had lost her mind. David Song tried to interject legal concerns. Victor Huang surprisingly spoke in support, arguing that bold action was better than slow collapse. Ryan watched Elena stand firm in the center of the storm, her expression never wavering. This was the CEO who'd built a $70 billion empire from nothing. This was the woman who'd escaped her father's control and carved out her own destiny. This was someone who'd learned that survival meant being willing to bet everything when the stakes were highest. Enough! James Corvus's voice cut through the chaos. The old CFO stood slowly, his exhaustion evident, but his authority undiminished. Let her finish. Elena nodded gratefully. I know what I'm asking is unprecedented. Emergency powers, complete authority, trust in my judgment after my chief of staff just betrayed me. You have every reason to say no, to remove me and bring in new leadership, to kill the Meridian deal entirely and retreat to safer ground. She turned off the presentation, facing the board directly. But I'm not asking you to trust my judgment. I'm asking you to look at the facts. This company has grown 43% under my leadership. We've expanded into new markets, developed groundbreaking technology, and outperformed every competitor. Yes, I made mistakes. I trusted Marcus without seeing his obsession. I pursued an acquisition without adequate due diligence. I let my need to prove myself cloud my judgment. Her voice dropped, becoming almost intimate despite the large room. But I also stopped the sabotage. I uncovered the truth about Meridian's hidden liabilities. I spent last night finding a solution instead of collapsing in fear. And I'm standing here now, telling you the complete truth about our situation, because I learned something important from Marcus's betrayal. She looked directly at Margaret Hayes. Control through deception is not leadership. Protection through manipulation is not loyalty. And success built on hiding the truth is just waiting to collapse. So I'm giving you the truth, all of it, and asking you to make an informed choice about this company's future. The silence that followed was profound. Ryan found himself holding his breath, waiting to see if Elena's gamble would pay off. She'd laid herself bare before these powerful people, admitted her mistakes, and asked them to give her one more chance. I want to hear from Mr. Hale. The voice came from Thomas Werner, a German investor who controlled a significant block of shares. You brought him in to investigate. What did you find? Beyond what Ms. Voss has presented? All eyes turned to Ryan's corner. Elena's expression flickered with concern. This hadn't been part of the plan. But she nodded slightly, giving him permission to speak. Ryan stood, his jaw still throbbing from Marcus's punch, his cheap sport coat suddenly feeling inadequate in this room of expensive suits. I found exactly what Ms. Voss described, he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. Corporate sabotage driven by misguided loyalty. A hidden trap in the Meridian deal. And a CEO who, when faced with betrayal and disaster, chose truth over cover-up. He walked slowly toward the table, aware that every eye was tracking him. But Mr. Werner asked what else I found, so I'll tell you. I found a company where 7 highly competent executives all have access to everything, but none of them notice the sabotage happening under their noses. That's not incompetence. That's a culture where people are too afraid of Ms. Voss to question her decisions. Elena's face tightened, but she didn't interrupt. I found a CFO who's been loyal for 23 years but is so burned out he's thinking about retirement. A COO who's brilliant but treated like a subordinate rather than a partner. A general counsel who's cautious to the point of paralysis. A head of strategy who knows everything but isn't trusted to make final decisions. A CTO who opposed this acquisition but felt like his opinion didn't matter. And an executive assistant who sees everything but is too junior to speak up. Ryan reached the table, placing his hands on the polished wood. I found a company where one person makes all the important decisions, and everyone else just executes. That worked when Voss Industries was small and scrappy. But you're a $70 billion conglomerate now. One person can't see everything, know everything, control everything. Eventually that person makes mistakes. And when they do, There's no one empowered to catch those mistakes before they become disasters. Margaret Hayes smiled grimly. So you're arguing we should remove her? No, I'm arguing she needs to change how she leads. Give her the emergency powers she's requesting. Let her save this deal or kill it properly. But make it conditional. If she succeeds, she has to restructure how decisions are made in this company. Real executive authority, real delegation, real trust in the people she hired. He looked at Elena, seeing surprise and something that might have been respect in her eyes. Because the truth is, Ms. Voss is brilliant. She's driven. She's capable of things most people can't imagine. But she's also human. And humans need support systems, not just loyal subordinates. If you want this company to survive the next decade, you need a CEO who knows when to lead and when to trust others to lead. Ryan stepped back from the table. That's what I found, Mr. Werner. A company at a crossroads. It can evolve into something stronger, or it can collapse under the weight of one person's brilliance and blind spots. Your vote determines which path it takes. The boardroom was silent for a long moment. Then James Corvus spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. I've served this company for 23 years, under Elena's father, under interim leadership, and under Elena herself. And Mr. Hale is right. Elena is the most brilliant leader I've ever worked with. She's also the most controlling. We've all felt it, the sense that our job is to execute her vision, not contribute our own. He looked at Elena with something like sadness. Marcus was my friend. I still can't believe what he did. But I understand why he felt like sabotage was his only option. Because in this company, disagreeing with Elena Voss is career suicide. So we all learned to smile and nod and hope she was right. James, Elena started, let me finish, please. Corvus took a breath. I'm voting to give you the emergency powers, because you're still the best person to lead this company. But I'm also voting for Mr. Hale's conditions. If you save this deal, you need to change how you lead. Empower your executives, trust your team, build the kind of company that can survive without you having to control every decision. Patricia Lowell spoke next. I agree. Emergency powers with conditions. 2 weeks to restructure the Meridian deal. But if you succeed, real organizational change. I didn't spend 8 years at this company to be a glorified order taker. One by one, the executives voiced their support. Even Victor Huang, who'd opposed the acquisition from the start, agreed that Elena deserved one more chance. The board members deliberated more carefully. Margaret Hayes remained skeptical, questioning whether 2 weeks was enough time, whether Elena could really change her leadership style, whether the risk was worth taking. But Thomas Werner surprised everyone by speaking in Elena's defense. I've invested in hundreds of companies. Most fail not because their leaders are incompetent, but because they cannot adapt. Ms. Voss has shown she can adapt. By bringing in Mr. Hale, by uncovering the truth about Marcus, by standing here admitting her mistakes. That kind of self-awareness is rare and valuable. The vote was called. 10 in favor of emergency powers with conditions. 2 opposed. Elena had her authorization. As the board members filed out, already making calls and rearranging schedules to deal with the crisis, Ryan found himself alone with Elena in the emptying room. She stood by the window, looking out at the city below, her shoulders slightly slumped now that the performance was over. You threw me under the bus, she said quietly. I told the truth. You made me look like a control freak who can't delegate. You are a control freak who can't delegate. Elena turned and Ryan braced for anger. Instead, he saw something unexpected, relief. You're right, she said, about all of it. I've been so focused on proving I'm strong enough to lead alone that I forgot leaders don't have to be alone. I pushed everyone away except Marcus, and I didn't see his obsession because I needed his loyalty too much. She walked back to the table, gathering her presentation materials with shaking hands. 2 weeks to save a $15 billion deal while restructuring how I lead an entire company. No pressure. You asked for this. I know. Doesn't make it less terrifying. She looked up at him. Will you help me? Not just with Meridian, but with the other part. I don't know how to trust people with real authority. I don't know how to delegate without feeling like I'm losing control. I need someone to teach me. Ryan thought about his own past, his own failures at trust and delegation. I'm probably the wrong person for that job. You're exactly the right person. You've been on the receiving end of bad leadership. You know what it feels like to be blamed for someone else's mistakes. You can see my blind spots because you've lived through the consequences of them. She crossed to him, and Ryan was struck again by how young she looked when the CEO mask slipped. 30 years old and carrying the weight of an empire. Plus, she added with a small smile, you're the only person in this building who doesn't work for me. You can tell me the truth without worrying about getting fired. I'm a consultant. You can fire consultants. Then I won't. Consider yourself permanently retained for the next 2 weeks. Your job is to save this acquisition and teach me how to be a better leader. Think you can handle that? Ryan looked at the broken watch sitting on the table. Elena had brought it to the board meeting, a reminder of where this all started. 10 years ago, he'd made a promise to help when asked, no questions. Now that promise had evolved into something more complex. I'll do my best, he said. But Elena, you need to understand something. If we're going to restructure this deal and convince Meridian to give us another chance, we need complete honesty between us. No holding back because you're afraid I can't handle it. No making unilateral decisions and expecting me to support them blindly. Real partnership. I don't know if I can do that. Then we'll fail, and your board will remove you, and everything you built will be gone. The words hung between them, brutal and true. Elena took a breath. Okay. Real partnership, complete honesty. I'll try. Trying isn't enough. Then I'll succeed, because failure isn't an option. Before Ryan could respond, Elena's phone rang. She answered, listened for 30 seconds, and her face went pale. When? She asked. Then, how bad? Finally, send me everything, now. She hung up and looked at Ryan with an expression of pure devastation. That was our contact at Meridian. Their board just voted. They're rejecting our acquisition offer and going public with the reasons why. The leaked documents, the evidence of internal sabotage, concerns about our leadership stability. When do they announce? 3 hours. At their quarterly earnings call. They're going to tell the entire market that Voss Industries tried to acquire them, but failed due to internal chaos. Ryan felt his stomach drop. 3 hours. Once that announcement hit, the damage would be catastrophic. Can we stop them? Not unless we can give them a compelling reason to delay. Something concrete. Something that proves we've addressed their concerns and deserve another chance. Elena was already pulling up documents on her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. We need to present them with the restructured deal terms. Today. Before they make that announcement. That's impossible. We just got authorization. We haven't even finished the analysis. Then we finish it now. We have 3 hours to put together a proposal good enough to make Meridian's board pause. 3 hours to save everything. Well, Ryan looked at her, exhausted, desperate, brilliant, impossible, and made a decision. Call your team, everyone. Get them here immediately. We're going to need all of them. They'll never pull together a proposal this fast, not after last night's chaos. They will if you trust them to do it. James handles the financial restructuring. Patricia manages the operational integration. David tackles the legal isolation of liabilities. Rebecca designs the strategic narrative. Victor validates the technology assumptions. Lisa crafts the communication strategy. Ryan moved to the whiteboard, already sketching out a project plan. You delegate the pieces and trust them to execute. I coordinate and make sure everything comes together coherently. And in 3 hours, we walk into Meridian's boardroom with a proposal so solid they have no choice but to delay their announcement. Elena stared at him. You're asking me to trust 6 people I just admitted I don't trust enough. I'm asking you to prove you meant what you said in that board meeting, about changing how you lead, about building something stronger than one person's brilliance. And if they fail, if the proposal has gaps or errors or doesn't come together, then we fail together, but at least you'll have tried a different way. For a long moment, Elena stood frozen, and Ryan could see the war happening inside her. Every instinct screaming to take control, to do it herself, to not risk everything on other people's competence. Then she picked up her phone and started making calls. James, I need you in my office in 10 minutes. Bring your entire finance team and every model we have on the Meridian deal. Patricia, emergency project, 3-hour deadline, operational integration plan. David, legal restructuring to isolate liabilities. Ryan watched her delegate piece by piece, trusting her team with the most important project of her career. It was the hardest thing he'd ever seen someone do. Within 20 minutes, Elena's office was full of people, laptops, coffee, and controlled chaos. James Corvus and his finance team occupied one corner, rebuilding financial models at lightning speed. Patricia Lowell commandeered another area, her operations specialists mapping integration plans. David Song's legal team worked on liability isolation structures. Rebecca Tarn crafted strategic narratives at the conference table. Victor Huang validated technology assumptions via video call with his engineering staff. Lisa Park prepared communication materials in case they succeeded. And Elena, for maybe the first time in her career, stepped back and let them work. Ryan moved between groups, asking questions, identifying gaps, ensuring consistency. He'd done this before years ago when he'd been good at his job. The skills came back easily, seeing the big picture, connecting disparate pieces, knowing when to push and when to trust. "We have a problem," James's voice cut through the activity. "The debt restructuring creates a tax liability that wipes out most of the synergy value, unless we can find a way to transfer the debt to a foreign subsidiary before the acquisition closes," Rebecca interrupted. "It's been done before in cross-border deals. David, is that legally viable?" David looked up from his laptop. "Maybe. I'd need to check precedent, but conceptually, yes. It could work. Give me 20 minutes. You have 15, Elena said calmly. We're on a clock. Ryan watched the team operate and saw what Elena had built beneath the surface control. These were exceptional people who'd been held back by a leader who wouldn't let them lead. Now, given authority and urgency, they were extraordinary. 2 hours in, they had a framework. Not perfect, but solid enough to present. "We're missing something," Patricia said, reviewing the consolidated proposal. "The restructuring is elegant, the legal protections are strong, the strategic case is compelling. But why should Meridian believe we can execute this in 2 weeks? What's our credibility argument?" Silence fell over the room. She was right. After last night's disaster, after Marcus's betrayal, after the evidence of internal chaos, why should Meridian trust that Voss Industries could pull off this complex restructuring? "We need a gesture," Ryan said slowly. "Something that proves we're serious. Something that shows we've fundamentally changed." "Like what?" Victor asked. Ryan looked at Elena. "Like the CEO publicly taking responsibility for the failures and implementing structural changes to prevent them from happening again." Elena's expression tightened. "You want me to announce organizational changes before we've even discussed what they should be? I want you to commit to them publicly. Make it part of the proposal. Voss Industries is restructuring both this deal and our internal governance. New executive authorities, new decision-making processes, new checks and balances. Make it real." "That's insane. I can't commit to undefined changes." "Yes, you can. Because you're going to trust your team to design them." Ryan gestured to the room full of executives. "They know what needs to change better than anyone. Let them propose the new structure." Patricia leaned forward. "You're serious?" "Completely. You have 45 minutes to design a new governance model that addresses the weaknesses Mr. Hale identified in the board meeting. Elena commits to implementing it if we succeed with Meridian. That's your credibility argument, fundamental change backed by public commitment." The executives looked at each other, then at Elena. She took a breath. "Do it. Design the governance structure you think this company needs. I'll review it, but I won't override it unless it's genuinely unworkable. We present it to Meridian as proof that we're serious about change." For the next 45 minutes, the executives worked with an energy Ryan had never seen. This wasn't just about saving a deal anymore. It was about reshaping the company they'd served, about finally having a voice in how it was run. Elena stood by the window, watching them work, her expression unreadable. Ryan joined her. "Second thoughts?" "Constant thoughts, but not second ones." She glanced at him. "I'm terrified they'll design something that strips away all my authority, that turns me into a figurehead CEO who just implements other people's decisions." "Is that really what scares you?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "No. What scares me is that they might be better at this than I am. That if I give them real power, they'll prove I was never as indispensable as I thought." "You're not indispensable. Nobody is. But you're still the best person to lead this company, just not alone." How do you know that? Ryan thought about his own fall from grace, his own rebuilding in obscurity. Because the people who survive aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who can adapt. You're adapting right now, in real time, under impossible pressure. That's what makes you a leader worth following. Before Elena could respond, Patricia called out, "We have something. It's rough, but it's a framework." The team gathered around the conference table as Patricia presented their proposed governance structure. Real executive authority distributed among the leadership team, quarterly board reviews with mandatory external input, decision-making protocols that required consultation and sign-off from relevant executives, financial controls that prevented any single person from unilateral action above certain thresholds. It was comprehensive, it was well-designed, and it fundamentally changed how Voss Industries would operate. Elena studied the proposal, her face giving away nothing. The room held its breath. "It's good," she said finally. "Really good. I have 3 concerns, but they're refinements, not rejections. We incorporate this into the Meridian presentation. Show them we're serious about institutional change." The relief in the room was palpable. James checked his watch. "We have 40 minutes until Meridian's earnings call. Can we get a meeting?" "I'll call their CEO directly," Elena said. "Ask for 30 minutes before the call. Tell him we have a revised proposal that addresses all his board's concerns." She made the call while her team finalized the presentation materials. Ryan watched it all come together. Finance, operations, legal, strategy, technology, communications, governance. 7 different work streams merging into one coherent proposal. It was beautiful in its way. The kind of coordination that only happened when talented people trusted each other enough to collaborate fully. Elena hung up. "We have 25 minutes. Their CEO will meet with us, but only if we can present something substantive. If it's not good enough, they go public with the rejection." "Then let's make sure it's good enough," Patricia said, already packing files into her briefcase. The drive to Meridian's headquarters took 15 minutes through downtown traffic. Ryan rode in the car with Elena, both of them silent, reviewing the proposal one last time. The rest of the team followed in a second vehicle, James, Patricia, and David coming as the core negotiation team. "I've never done anything like this before," Elena admitted quietly. "Like what?" "Walked into a high-stakes negotiation without controlling every detail myself. Trusted other people to handle pieces of the argument, committed to changes I haven't fully designed." "How does it feel?" "Terrifying, exhilarating, like jumping off a cliff and hoping someone built a net." Ryan smiled. "That's called trust. It gets easier with practice." "Does it?" "I have no idea, but it sounds like something a leadership consultant would say." Elena actually laughed, breaking the tension. Then her expression sobered as Meridian's building came into view, a gleaming tower that rivaled Voss Industries' headquarters. "Ryan, if this doesn't work, if they reject us anyway, I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything. For stopping when you didn't have to 10 years ago, for coming when I called, for telling me the truth even when it hurt, for showing me there's a different way to lead. Save the gratitude for after we succeed. I'm serious. Whatever happens in the next hour, you changed something in me, something I didn't know needed changing." The car pulled up to the entrance. The team assembled, carrying tablets and briefcases and the weight of everything riding on this moment. They had 25 minutes to save a $15 billion deal and prove that Elena Voss could build something stronger than her own brilliance. As they walked through Meridian's lobby toward the executive elevators, Ryan felt the old familiar pressure of high-stakes negotiations. He'd lived in this world once, before it had chewed him up and spit him out. Now he was back, fighting for someone else's future, trusting that this time would be different. The elevator doors closed, and they rode up in silence toward whatever came next. The elevator opened onto Meridian's executive floor, and Ryan's first thought was that it looked like a museum. All marble and glass and carefully curated art that screamed old money trying to appear innovative. The receptionist, a young man with perfect hair and a practiced smile, directed them to a conference room at the end of a long hallway. Their footsteps echoed on polished floors. Nobody spoke. The weight of what they were about to attempt pressed down on all of them. The conference room was smaller than Ryan expected. Intimate, almost. A A table that seated 8 floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district and already occupied by 3 people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Robert Meridian himself sat at the head of the table, 60-something, silver hair, the kind of weathered face that came from decades of making billion-dollar decisions. To his left was Catherine Wu, Meridian's general counsel, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp as knives. On his right, Thomas Bradford, their CFO, who was already reviewing something on his tablet with the focus of a man looking for reasons to say no. "Miss Voss?" Robert stood, extending his hand. His grip was firm, his smile polite but cold. "I appreciate you coming on such short notice. Though I'll be honest, I'm not sure what you think you can accomplish in 20 minutes that will change our board's decision." Elena shook his hand without flinching. "Then let's not waste time on pleasantries. You're planning to announce our acquisition offer's rejection during your earnings call in," she checked her watch, "17 minutes. We're here to give you a reason to delay that announcement. We've seen your internal chaos, Ms. Voss. Your chief of staff arrested for sabotage, leaked documents showing hidden agendas and manipulated strategies. Why would we trust anything you present today?" "Because what you've seen is the mess," Elena said, sitting down and gesturing for her team to do the same. "What we're about to show you is how we cleaned it up. James?" James Corvus opened his laptop, projecting financial models onto the room's screen. "Mr. Bradford, you've reviewed our original acquisition proposal. You've also received leaked documents showing internal projections that made the deal look risky. I'm here to show you why those leaked documents were deliberately manipulated to kill a deal that actually benefits both companies." For the next 8 minutes, James walked through the restructured financial framework with the calm authority of someone who'd spent 23 years mastering complex deals. He showed how isolating Meridian's hidden liabilities in a separate entity protected both companies. He demonstrated how the debt restructuring created tax advantages that actually increased synergy value. He laid out cash flow projections that proved the combined entity would be stronger than either company alone. Bradford listened, his expression gradually shifting from skeptical to interested. "This is significantly different from your original proposal, because we discovered information you deliberately hid from us," Patricia Lowell said, her voice sharp. "Your company has undisclosed liabilities tied to offshore entities, debts that weren't in your financial statements, legal exposure that you buried under shell companies." Catherine Wu's professional mask cracked slightly. "That's a serious accusation. That we can prove." David Song slid a folder across the table. "Complete documentation of the liability chain. Connections to entities that trace back to Elena's late father. You weren't just selling us your company, Ms. Wu. You were selling us a trap." Robert Meridian's expression darkened. "We had no knowledge of any connection to Arthur Voss." "Maybe not you personally," Elena said, "but someone on your board did. Someone who thought they could use my father's posthumous revenge against me to destroy both our companies. The question is whether you let that person succeed or whether you work with us to neutralize the trap and build something legitimate." The room fell silent. Ryan watched the calculation happening behind Robert's eyes, weighing options, assessing risks, trying to determine if this was real or just another manipulation. "Even if we believed you," Robert said slowly, "your company is in chaos. Your chief of staff betrayed you. Your internal controls failed. How do we know this won't happen again?" "Because we're fundamentally changing how Voss Industries operates." Elena nodded to Patricia, who pulled up the governance proposal. Patricia presented the new executive authority structure, the distributed decision-making protocols, the external oversight mechanisms. She explained how the sabotage had revealed weaknesses that they were now addressing systematically. She laid out a framework that would make Voss Industries stronger and more resilient. "You're proposing to restructure your entire governance model as part of this deal?" Catherine asked, her lawyer's mind already seeing the implications. "We're proposing to do it regardless of this deal," Elena corrected. "But yes, we're willing to make it a condition of the acquisition. You want assurance that Voss Industries won't implode? We're building institutional strength that doesn't depend on any single person, including me." Ryan watched Robert process this, saw the shift in his expression. This wasn't what he'd expected. Nobody came into a desperate negotiation and offered to limit their own power. "I need to understand something," Robert said, looking directly at Elena. "Why?" Why restructure your authority? Why admit weakness? Why not just clean up the mess quietly and pretend none of this happened? Elena met his gaze steadily. Because pretending almost destroyed my company. Because control through deception isn't sustainable. And because if I'm asking you to trust me with a $15 billion merger, you deserve to see that I've learned from my mistakes. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. My father built his empire on fear and secrets. He controlled everything, trusted no one, and died alone with more enemies than friends. I've been following his playbook without realizing it, building walls, consolidating power, treating loyalty as obedience. Marcus's betrayal showed me where that path leads. So yes, I'm restructuring how I lead, because I want to build something that lasts longer than my ability to control it. The honesty in her voice was unmistakable. Ryan saw it land with Robert, saw the older CEO recognize something of himself in Elena's admission. You brought a consultant to investigate your own company, Robert said, his eyes moving to Ryan. Someone with no corporate position, no obvious expertise. Why? Ryan had been silent until now, letting Elena's team make the case. But he understood what Robert was really asking. Why should I trust you? Because I owed her a debt, Ryan said simply. 10 years ago, she asked me for a promise. I gave it. When she called to collect, I came. No corporate politics, no career advancement, no hidden agenda, just a debt repaid. And now? Now I'm here because I've seen what this company could become if it stops being about one person's brilliance and starts being about institutional excellence. I've also seen what happens when talented people are controlled rather than empowered. It destroys companies, careers, and lives. Elena asked me to help her not make those mistakes. So I am. Robert studied him for a long moment. You have an unusual background for a consultant, Mr. Hale. Harrison and Cross Financial. The scandal 6 years ago. You were accused of manipulating client accounts. Ryan's blood went cold. Of course they'd researched him. Of course his past would come up now, at the worst possible moment. I was accused, Ryan said carefully. Never charged. Because I was innocent. I was a scapegoat for people higher up who needed someone to blame. So you claim. So the facts prove, if anyone bothers to look past the headlines. Ryan's voice hardened. But I understand why you'd question my credibility. A man with a destroyed reputation, working for a CEO whose company is in crisis. Looks suspicious. It does. Then look at the results. In 1 week, I identified the saboteur, uncovered the trap in your deal, helped restructure the acquisition to protect both companies, and convinced Elena to fundamentally change how she leads. If I'm working for a competitor or running some kind of con, I'm doing a terrible job of it, Catherine Wu spoke up. Or you're very good at it. Create chaos, offer solutions, gain trust, then strike when defenses are down. Ryan laughed without humor. Ma'am, if I wanted to destroy Voss Industries, I'd just walk away and let Elena keep operating the way she was. The sabotage, the control issues, the blind spots, they were doing the job perfectly well without my help. Mr. Hale, Elena said quietly, a warning in her voice. No, it's true. You were brilliant and impossible and heading for disaster. I'm not here to make you look good. I'm here to make you better. And if Meridian's team can't see the difference between manipulation and genuine change, then maybe this deal deserves to fail. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Then Robert Meridian did something unexpected. He laughed. You've got spine, I'll give you that. He looked at Elena. Is he always this blunt? Increasingly, Elena said dryly. It's exhausting. I imagine it is. Robert's expression shifted, becoming more thoughtful. Ms. Voss, I'm going to be equally blunt. Your proposal is impressive. The restructuring is elegant. The governance changes are substantial. But we have 8 minutes until our earnings call, and my board voted to reject your offer based on legitimate concerns about stability and leadership. So you're saying no, Elena said, her voice flat. I'm saying I need more than 20 minutes and a good presentation to reverse a board decision. Even if everything you've shown me is genuine, and I'm inclined to believe it is, I can't walk back into that boardroom and tell them to ignore what they've seen. Bradford nodded. The leaked documents created real damage. Our shareholders are concerned. Our partners are asking questions. We can't just pretend none of that happened. Patricia leaned forward. Then don't pretend. Acknowledge it. Tell your board that Voss Industries experienced a crisis, addressed it decisively, and emerged with stronger governance. Tell them the hidden liabilities we uncovered protect both companies. Tell them this deal is better now than it was before the sabotage. On what timeline? Your CEO just asked for 2 weeks of emergency powers to restructure this acquisition. That's not enough time to— It's exactly enough time, James interrupted. We've already done the core work in 3 hours. The restructuring framework is solid. The legal protections are viable. The financial models are complete. We need 2 weeks for due diligence verification, contract finalization, and regulatory filing. That's achievable if both teams commit to it. Commit to it? Catherine's eyebrows rose. Mr. Corvus, you're talking about the fastest complex acquisition in corporate history. The risk of errors, oversights, or legal exposure is enormous. So is the risk of walking away, Rebecca Tarn said, speaking for the first time. Mr. Meridian, your company is struggling. Your quantum encryption technology is brilliant, but you lack the manufacturing scale to bring it to market effectively. You've lost 2 major contracts in the past 6 months because you couldn't deliver volume. Your stock is down 30% from its peak. You need this acquisition as much as we do. Robert's expression tightened. We have other options. Do you? Who else can offer the manufacturing capability, market access, and financial resources that Voss Industries brings? Who else can integrate your technology into existing product lines and scale globally within 18 months? Rebecca pulled up a competitive analysis. Your other option is TechCore Industries, who've been circling for months. But they want to buy your company to kill your technology and eliminate competition. We want to buy you to build something neither of us could achieve alone. She let that sink in. So yes, this deal is risky. Yes, 2 weeks is aggressive. Yes, Voss Industries just went through a crisis. But crises reveal truth, Mr. Meridian. And the truth we revealed is that Elena Voss is willing to change, to grow, to build something stronger than her own ego. How many CEOs can you say that about? Robert looked at his team, then back at Elena. You've put together an impressive case in remarkably little time, but I need something more before I delay our announcement. What? Elena asked. Proof that this isn't just about saving face, that you're genuinely committed to these changes, not just using them as negotiating tactics. He stood, walking to the window. Here's what I want. You go back to your board today and implement the governance changes immediately. Not after the deal closes, not contingent on our approval. Now, real executive authority distributed to your team. Real oversight mechanisms in place. Real accountability structures activated. He turned back to face her. You do that, publicly and verifiably, and I'll go back to my board and argue for a 2-week extension to evaluate your restructured proposal. No guarantees, no promises, just a fair evaluation of whether this deal makes sense for both companies. Elena looked at her team. James nodded slowly. Patricia showed no expression but didn't object. David looked concerned but not opposed. If I implement those changes immediately, Elena said carefully, I'm giving up emergency powers before I've used them to restructure this deal. I'm trusting that you'll negotiate in good faith, that my board will support the distributed authority, that the changes won't paralyze us at the worst possible moment. Yes, that's a lot of trust to ask for. It's exactly the amount of trust you're asking from us. Robert returned to the table. You want us to believe you've changed. Prove it. Take the risk of trusting before you have guarantees. Ryan watched Elena process this impossible choice. She could refuse, walk away, try to save the deal through conventional negotiation, but conventional negotiation had already failed. The leaked documents and Marcus's sabotage had poisoned that well. Or she could leap into the void, trust that doing the right thing would lead to the right outcome, believe that fundamental change was worth more than careful control. Elena looked at Ryan, a question in her eyes. He nodded once. Do it. She took a breath. All right, I'll implement the governance changes immediately. Full executive authority distributed by end of business today, oversight mechanisms activated tomorrow, complete transparency with my board about what I'm doing and why. Robert extended his hand. Then you have your 2 weeks, Ms. Voss. My board meets tomorrow morning at 9. I'll present your restructured proposal and recommend we give it serious evaluation. What they decide is up to them, but you'll get a fair hearing. Elena shook his hand and Ryan saw relief flash across her face before she controlled it. They had 2 weeks. Maybe. If Meridian's board agreed, if Elena's board didn't revolt at the immediate implementation of governance changes, if nothing else went catastrophically wrong. As they rode the elevator back down to ground level, nobody spoke. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by exhaustion and the dawning realization of what they'd just committed to. On the street outside, while the rest of the team headed for their cars, Elena grabbed Ryan's arm. I just gave away my authority based on a promise from a man I met 40 minutes ago. Tell me I didn't just destroy everything. You didn't destroy everything. You built the foundation to save it. How do you know? Ryan thought about his own leap into the void years ago when he'd stopped for a dying stranger. Because sometimes the only way forward is trust, even when it's terrifying. Elena's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. Margaret Hayes is calling an emergency board meeting for 6 o'clock. She's heard about the governance changes and wants to vote on whether to allow immediate implementation. Of course she does. Ryan, if my board rejects this, if they see it as me losing control rather than gaining strength, they could remove me tonight, before we even get a chance to restructure the Meridian deal. Then we better make sure they see it the right way. The board meeting at 6 was even more tense than the morning session. Margaret Hayes had mobilized the skeptical faction, the board members who'd never fully trusted Elena, who saw the governance changes as weakness rather than wisdom. They argued that implementing major structural changes in the middle of a crisis was reckless, that Elena was giving away authority out of desperation rather than strategy, that the company needed strong leadership, not distributed decision-making. Thomas Werner countered that the changes were overdue regardless of the Meridian situation, that Elena's willingness to limit her own power showed maturity and long-term thinking, that the company had outgrown one-person control. The debate raged for 90 minutes. Elena sat quietly through most of it, letting her board argue about her future. It was surreal, watching powerful people dissect your leadership while you remained silent. But Ryan understood the strategy. She'd made her case that morning. Now she had to trust the board to make the right decision. Finally, Margaret called for a vote. The question before us is whether to approve immediate implementation of the governance restructuring proposed this morning, or to delay implementation pending successful completion of the Meridian acquisition. All in favor of immediate implementation? 8 hands rose. Opposed? 4 hands, including Margaret's. Elena had her authorization, but it was closer than Ryan liked. 4 board members who thought she was making a mistake. 4 people who'd be watching for any sign of failure, ready to say we told you so. As the board members filed out, Margaret stopped beside Elena's chair. You're gambling everything on trust, Ms. Voss. I hope you're right, because if you're wrong, I'll be first in line to vote for your removal. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you just gave away the authority that made you effective. You've distributed power to executives who may or may not be loyal. You've created accountability structures that will slow down decision-making. And you've done all of this while trying to close the most complex deal of your career in 2 weeks. Margaret leaned down, her voice dropping. I've seen a lot of CEOs over the years. The ones who succeed are ruthless. They control everything, trust no one, and make decisions without hesitation. You're trying to be something different, something collaborative and transparent and human. It's admirable. It's also probably suicidal. She straightened and walked away, leaving Elena sitting alone at the long table. Ryan waited until the room was empty before approaching. She's wrong, he said. Is she? Because right now it feels like I just dismantled the only thing that made me strong. You dismantled the thing that made you isolated. There's a difference. Elena stood slowly, gathering her materials. We have 2 weeks to restructure a $15 billion acquisition, convince Meridian's board we're stable enough to trust, and prove to my own board that distributed authority doesn't mean distributed chaos. How do we do that? The same way we presented to Meridian, together. Your team handles the pieces, you coordinate the whole, and I make sure nothing falls through the cracks. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible, if you actually trust them. They walked out of the boardroom together, and Ryan saw Elena's team waiting in the hallway. James, Patricia, David, Rebecca, Victor, Lisa, all of them looking exhausted but determined. Well, Patricia asked, did the board approve? Immediate implementation. Elena confirmed. Which means as of now, you all have real authority. Financial decisions over 10 million require CFO approval, James. Operational changes require COO sign-off, Patricia. Legal risk assessments need general counsel agreement, David. Strategic initiatives need your validation, Rebecca. Technology investments need Victor's approval. External communications need Lisa's review. She looked at each of them. I'm trusting you to exercise that authority wisely, to make decisions I might not make, to disagree with me when I'm wrong, to run this company together instead of just executing my vision. James spoke first. We won't let you down. I know, but I also know I've spent years training you to defer to me. So this is going to be awkward and uncomfortable, and we're probably going to clash. But we're going to do it anyway, because the alternative is going back to the way things were. And that almost destroyed us. Patricia nodded slowly. 2 weeks. Restructure Meridian, prove the new governance works, and save the company. No pressure. None at all. Elena almost smiled. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow morning at 7, we start the hardest 2 weeks of our careers. As the team dispersed, Ryan and Elena stood alone in the empty hallway. Come with me, Elena said. There's something I need to show you. They took the elevator to the 42nd floor, the executive level that Ryan had never visited. Elena led him past empty offices and dark conference rooms to a door at the very end of the hall. She unlocked it and stepped inside, flicking on lights. It was an archive room, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with file boxes, old contracts, historical documents, the accumulated paper trail of a company built from nothing. Elena went to a specific shelf, pulled out a box labeled 2016 Personal, and extracted a folder. Inside was a collection of newspaper clippings, police reports, and medical records. Ryan saw his own name in several of the articles. I kept everything, Elena said quietly. Every article about the accident, every piece of documentation about the night you found me. I wanted to remember that there were still good people in the world, people who helped without expecting anything in return. She pulled out a photograph, young Elena, maybe 21, standing in front of a small office building with a sign that read Voss Industries Prototype Lab. This was 6 months after the accident. I'd escaped my father's house, sold the jewelry I'd stolen, and used the money to lease space for my first lab. I had one employee, myself, and a dream of building something my father couldn't control. She traced the edge of the photograph. I was terrified, alone, convinced I'd fail. And then I'd remember that stranger who stopped on a dark highway for someone he didn't know. And I'd think, if random kindness exists in the world, maybe I can build something worth protecting. Elena set down the photo and looked at Ryan. You gave me hope before I knew I needed it. Now I'm trying to give you something you probably didn't know you needed either. What's that? Proof that the man who stopped that night, the one who kept promises and believed in helping people, that man never really died. He just forgot who he was for a while. Ryan felt something tight in his chest loosen. For 6 years, he'd thought of himself as broken, a failed professional, a destroyed reputation, a father who only saw his son on supervised weekends. He'd built a small, safe life and told himself it was enough. But Elena saw something different. She saw the person he'd been before the scandal, the person he could still be if he let himself try. I don't know if I can be that person again, Ryan admitted. You already are. You stopped for me twice, once on a highway, once when I showed up at your door in the rain. Both times, you could have walked away. Both times, you chose to help. She moved closer, and Ryan was acutely aware of the empty building around them, the late hour, the intimacy of this moment. Marcus loved me, Elena said softly, but his love was about possession, about controlling me for my own good, about making decisions he thought I was too blind to make myself. Elena, I'm not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I'm saying it because you need to understand the difference. What you've done these past 2 weeks, challenging me, telling me the truth, pushing me to change, that's not about possession. That's about believing I can be better than I am. She was close enough now that Ryan could see flecks of gold in her dark eyes. I'm not asking for anything, Ryan. I just wanted you to know that you've changed me, fundamentally, and whatever happens with Meridian, whether we succeed or fail, I'm grateful. Ryan knew he should step back, should maintain professional distance, should remember that he was a consultant and she was a CEO. And mixing personal feelings with business was how disasters happened. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was. "We're going to succeed," he said. "Not because you're brilliant, though you are. Not because your team is exceptional, though they are. But because you're finally fighting for something bigger than proving you're better than your father." What am I fighting for? The people who trust you. The team you've built. The company that could become something your father never imagined. A place where collaboration matters more than control. Elena's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "Stay," she said. "After this is over. After the debt is repaid and the promise is fulfilled. Stay and help me build that company, not as a consultant, as someone who belongs here." It was tempting, more tempting than Ryan wanted to admit, to have a place again, to be valued, to be part of something important. But he'd learned the hard way that promises made in moments of vulnerability could become chains. "Ask me again in 2 weeks," he said gently, "when we're not exhausted and terrified and running on adrenaline, when you've had time to see if the changes stick, when we both know if this is real or just crisis bonding." Elena nodded, understanding. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. 2 weeks, then we'll see what's real." They stood there in the archive room, surrounded by the paper ghosts of Elena's history, and Ryan felt the weight of what they were about to attempt. 2 weeks to restructure a deal, prove a new governance model, and save a company from the traps laid by a dead man. 2 weeks to determine if trust was stronger than control. 2 weeks to see if broken people could build something unbroken. The next morning at 7, they began. The war room, as they'd started calling it, occupied the entire 38th floor conference space. Whiteboards covered 3 walls showing timelines, task assignments, risk assessments, and integration plans. Laptops crowded every surface. Coffee cups accumulated faster than anyone could clear them. Ryan stood at the center of organized chaos, watching Elena's team operate with an intensity he'd never seen before. This wasn't the careful deference they'd shown when Elena controlled everything. This was 7 brilliant minds unleashed, empowered to make real decisions, fighting to prove the new governance model could work. James Corvus had his finance team running scenarios around the clock, stress testing the restructured deal against every possible market condition. Patricia Lowell coordinated between Voss and Meridian operational teams, mapping integration plans that would take effect the moment contracts were signed. David Song navigated a minefield of regulatory requirements, filing preliminary disclosures while building legal structures to isolate the hidden liabilities. Rebecca Tarn worked the strategic narrative, preparing materials for investors, analysts, and the press. Victor Huang led technical due diligence teams, verifying that Meridian's quantum encryption actually worked as advertised. Lisa Park managed communications, controlling the story as rumors spread through the industry. And Elena moved between them all, coordinating without controlling, advising without overriding, learning to trust in real time. It was messy. It was stressful. And it was working. On day 3, the first major clash happened. "We can't meet their timeline demands," Patricia said flatly, throwing down a project plan in the middle of a team meeting. "Meridian wants operational integration plans finalized by day 7. That's impossible. We need at least 10 days to do it properly." Elena's instinct was visible on her face, the impulse to override, to push harder, to demand the impossible, and expect her team to deliver. Ryan saw her jaw tighten, saw her start to speak. Then she stopped, took a breath, and asked the question she was learning to ask. "What happens if we don't meet their timeline?" Their board loses confidence that we can execute. They vote no on day 14 and we're back to square one. "And if we rush the integration plans and make mistakes?" Patricia's expression softened slightly. "We implement a flawed structure that costs us millions in inefficiency over the next 3 years. Elena looked at James. "Can we offer them something else? A concession that proves we're moving fast without compromising the integration quality?" James considered. "We could accelerate the financial audit completion, give them full transparency into our books 3 days earlier than scheduled. Show them we have nothing to hide." "Will that satisfy them?" "Maybe. It's a gesture of good faith, shows we're serious about speed where it matters." Elena nodded. "Do it. Patricia, take the 10 days you need. James, get the audit done early. We trade one timeline for another and hope Meridian sees it as cooperation rather than failure." It was a small moment, A single decision made collaboratively rather than unilaterally. But Ryan saw how it changed the energy in the room. The executives realizing their input actually mattered, that disagreeing wasn't career suicide. On day 5, Victor discovered a problem. The quantum encryption has a flaw, he announced, his face grim. Not fatal, but significant. Under certain network conditions, the algorithm degrades. It's still more secure than anything else on the market, but it's not the revolutionary breakthrough Meridian claimed. The room went silent. How significant? Elena asked carefully. Significant enough that if our competitors discover it, they'll use it to undermine the acquisition. They'll claim we're buying flawed technology, that we didn't do adequate due diligence, that this whole deal is smoke and mirrors. Rebecca leaned forward. Can we fix it? Yes, but it'll take resources, time, and deep collaboration between our engineering teams and theirs. We're talking about a year-long development effort post-acquisition. David Song closed his laptop. This is a material disclosure issue. If we know about the flaw and don't tell Meridian's board, we're potentially liable for fraud. If we do tell them, they might kill the deal. Everyone looked at Elena. Ryan saw the calculation in her eyes. She could hide the flaw, push through the acquisition, and deal with consequences later. 6 months ago, she might have done exactly that. But now, with her team watching, with the governance changes fresh, with trust on the line, we tell them, Elena said, immediately. Full disclosure of the flaw, Victor's assessment of fixed timeline, and our commitment to solving it post-acquisition. We give them the truth and let them decide if they still want to proceed. That could kill the deal, Patricia warned. So could hiding it and having them discover it later. At least this way, we're being honest. James picked up his phone. I'll request an emergency meeting with Robert Meridian for tomorrow morning. That night, Ryan found Elena alone in her office, staring at the city lights. You did the right thing, he said. Did I? Or did I just destroy 2 weeks of work because I'm too afraid to make the hard choice? There's a difference between hard choices and wrong choices. Hiding the flaw would have been wrong. Elena turned to face him. My father would have hidden it. He would have pushed through the deal, secured the acquisition, and dealt with the consequences from a position of strength. That's how you win in business, by being ruthless when it matters. And how did that work out for him? He built a billion-dollar empire and died alone, hated by his own daughter, with more enemies than friends. Ryan crossed to stand beside her at the window. You're not your father, Elena. You're building something different, something that might actually last. What if different doesn't work? What if collaboration and transparency and trust are just pretty ideas that collapse under real pressure? Then we'll find out tomorrow when you tell Meridian about the flaw. But I don't think they will. I think Robert respects honesty more than he respects ruthlessness. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Stay with me tonight. Not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. So Ryan stayed. They sat in her office, talking about everything except the deal. About childhoods and broken families and the long roads that had brought them to this moment. About hopes and fears and the terrifying vulnerability of letting people matter. Somewhere around 3 a.m, Elena fell asleep on the office couch, exhausted beyond endurance. Ryan found a blanket, covered her gently, and kept watch while she slept. The meeting with Robert Meridian was scheduled for 9 o'clock the next morning. Elena presented Victor's findings with unflinching honesty. The flaw in the quantum encryption, the degradation under network load, the year-long fixed timeline, the potential competitive exposure. She held nothing back. Robert listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When Elena finished, he turned to Catherine Wu. Your technical team knew about this. It wasn't a question. Catherine's professional mask slipped. We believed it could be resolved pre-acquisition. The engineering team thought. Your engineering team lied about the timeline. They told our board the technology was market-ready, and you didn't challenge that assessment. Robert's voice was cold. Ms. Voss comes into my office and discloses a flaw that undermines her own deal. Meanwhile, my own general counsel was hiding it to make us look better. Who do you think I trust more right now? Catherine had no answer. Robert stood, walking to the window. Miss Voss, you just gave me a reason to walk away from this acquisition. You've disclosed a material flaw in the core technology we're selling you. Why would you do that? Because hiding it would make me no better than Marcus, no better than my father, no better than the people who destroy trust for short-term gain. Elena met his gaze steadily. I'm trying to build something different, something where integrity matters more than winning, even if it costs me everything. Robert was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Catherine. You're fired. Effective immediately. Collect your things and be out of the building by noon. Catherine's face went white. Robert, you can't. I can, and I am. You lied to our board, compromised this acquisition, and demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership we don't need. He looked back at Elena. I'm approving your restructured proposal. With one condition, your CTO and our engineering team work together to fix this flaw. Joint development, shared resources, complete transparency. We build the solution together, or we fail together. Victor spoke up. That's unprecedented for a pre-acquisition partnership. So is a CEO who voluntarily discloses deal-killing flaws. We're past precedent, Mr. Huang. We're into trust. Robert extended his hand to Elena. You have your 2 weeks. Use them well. The relief on Elena's face was profound, but Ryan also saw something else, the realization that honesty had worked, that trust had been rewarded, that maybe, just maybe, there was a different way to win. The final week was a blur of contracts, approvals, regulatory filings, and integration planning. Ryan watched Elena's team operate at a level he'd never imagined possible, making decisions independently, coordinating seamlessly, challenging each other and Elena without fear. James restructured the financial terms 3 times based on new information, each time getting Elena's input, but not her permission. Patricia made operational commitments that Elena disagreed with, but ultimately supported. David navigated regulatory requirements with a cautiousness that frustrated Elena but protected the company. It was messy and imperfect, and occasionally infuriating. It was also the healthiest corporate culture Ryan had ever seen. On day 13, Margaret Hayes called Elena into a private meeting. Ryan waited outside the conference room, watching through glass walls as the board vice chair spoke intently with Elena. He couldn't hear words, but he could read body language. Margaret's stern expression, Elena's careful composure, the tension in both their shoulders. After 20 minutes, Elena emerged. Her face was unreadable. What happened? Ryan asked. She admitted she was wrong. About me? About the governance changes. About trust being weakness. Elena's voice shook slightly. She said watching me disclose the encryption flaw to Meridian, watching me choose honesty over advantage, reminded her why she invested in this company in the first place. She's voting to approve the acquisition tomorrow. That's good news. She also said my father would be ashamed of me, that I've betrayed everything he built by choosing collaboration over control. Elena looked at Ryan, and he saw tears threatening. And I told her I hope he would be ashamed, because his way destroyed people. My way might actually save them. Ryan pulled her into a hug, right there in the hallway where anyone could see. Executive and consultant, CEO and watchmaker, 2 people who'd found each other across a decade and learned that broken things could sometimes be made whole. The final board vote happened on day 14 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Meridian's board had voted that morning, 11 in favor, 1 opposed. The restructured acquisition was approved pending Voss Industries board consent. Now it was Elena's board's turn to decide. Ryan sat in his usual corner, watching the 12 board members review final materials. James presented the financial case, solid, conservative, thoroughly vetted. Patricia outlined operational integration, aggressive but achievable. David covered legal and regulatory, complex but compliant. Rebecca made the strategic argument, compelling and clear. Then Elena stood to make her closing statement. 14 days ago, I asked this board for emergency powers to save an acquisition that was collapsing. You gave me those powers with conditions, that I implement governance changes immediately, that I prove distributed authority could work, that I build something stronger than my own control. She looked around the table. I won't pretend these 2 weeks have been easy. I've had to let go of decisions I wanted to make myself. I've had to trust people to make choices I disagreed with. I've had to learn that being a leader doesn't mean being the smartest person in the room. It means building a room full of smart people and empowering them to lead. Elena pulled up a slide showing the organizational changes implemented over the past 2 weeks. Real executive authority, real decision-making power, real accountability. We've built a governance structure that doesn't depend on any single person, that can survive leadership transitions, that values collaboration over control. She clicked to the next slide. The restructured Meridian deal. This acquisition is better than it was 2 weeks ago. Not because I made it better, but because my team did. James found financial optimizations I never would have seen. Patricia designed integration plans more elegant than anything I could have created. David built legal protections that exceeded my understanding. Rebecca crafted strategic narratives that resonated better than mine. Victor fixed technology flaws I didn't know existed. Elena's voice strengthened. I didn't save this deal. We did. Together. By trusting each other enough to be honest about flaws, to disagree about approaches, to collaborate instead of compete. That's the company I'm asking you to believe in, not one CEO's brilliance, but institutional excellence built on trust. She sat down and Ryan saw something he'd never seen before in her expression. Peace. The peace of knowing she'd done everything she could, that the outcome was out of her hands, that trust meant accepting uncertainty. The board deliberated for 45 minutes. When they returned, Thomas Werner spoke. The board has voted unanimously to approve the Meridian acquisition as restructured and to ratify the governance changes implemented over the past 2 weeks. Ms.
Voss, you've proven that strength doesn't require control. Congratulations.
The room erupted in applause. The executives, the legal team, the staff who'd worked around the clock to make this happen. Elena stood, accepting congratulations, looking more relieved than triumphant. Ryan slipped out quietly. This was her moment, her team's victory. He'd played his part, repaid his debt. Now it was time to step back and let her lead without him. He was halfway to the elevator when Elena caught up to him. Where are you going? Home. The deal is done. The debt is repaid. You don't need me anymore. Yes, I do. Elena grabbed his arm. Ryan, I meant what I said 2 weeks ago. Stay. Help me build this company, not as a consultant, as something more. As what? I don't know yet. Chief of staff seems wrong after Marcus. Special advisor feels vague. Partner in building something that matters? She smiled. We'll figure out the title, but I need someone who can see my blind spots, who can tell me the truth when everyone else is afraid to, who can help me keep becoming the leader I'm trying to be. Ryan looked at her, exhausted, hopeful, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen at the beginning of this journey. I have a son. Supervise visitation every other weekend because my ex-wife doesn't trust me. I have a reputation that's still destroyed despite everything. I have an apartment above a laundromat and a life built around being invisible. What makes you think I belong in your world? Because you belong in mine. The real one, not the corporate facade. And because Sarah called me 3 days ago. Ryan's blood went cold. What? Your ex-wife. She found out you were working with me, did some research, put the pieces together. She wanted to know if you were in trouble, if you'd gotten involved in something dangerous, if she needed to protect Ethan. What did you tell her? The truth. That you saved my life 10 years ago, that I asked you to help me save my company, that you've been brilliant and honest and exactly the kind of person she should want her son to know. Elena pulled out her phone, showing him an email. She wrote back yesterday. Said if the Elena Voss believes in you, maybe she should give you another chance. She's proposing unsupervised visitation starting next month. Said something about how maybe it's time to trust the man you used to be instead of fearing the accusations that destroyed him. Ryan felt something break open in his chest. 6 years of shame and isolation cracking apart. You did that? I just told her the truth. You did the rest by being worthy of it. Elena stepped closer, and Ryan saw in her eyes what he'd been afraid to acknowledge in himself. This wasn't just gratitude or crisis bonding or convenience. This was connection. Real, complicated, terrifying connection between two people who'd both learned the hard way that trust was dangerous and necessary, and sometimes the only thing that could save you. Stay, Elena said again. Help me build something that lasts, and maybe, when we're both less broken, we can figure out what we are to each other, beyond debt and promises and crisis management. Ryan thought about his small apartment, his quiet life, his careful invisibility. He thought about the man he'd been before the scandal, before the destruction, before he'd learned to hide. He thought about the girl bleeding in a ditch who'd asked for a promise, And he thought about the woman standing in front of him now, offering something he'd thought he'd never have again, a place to belong. "Okay," he said. "I'll stay." 3 months later, Ryan stood in his new office on the 37th floor of Voss Industries, looking out at a city that felt different now, less like enemy territory, more like home. The title they'd settled on was Chief Strategic Advisor, vague enough to cover whatever the company needed, specific enough to carry authority. His job was to be Elena's conscience, her blind spot detector, the person who could tell her the truth when no one else would. It was terrifying and exhausting and the most alive he'd felt in 6 years. The Meridian acquisition had closed 2 weeks ago. The integration was messy but progressing. The governance changes were holding. Executives making real decisions. Elena learning to trust. The company evolving into something stronger than any single person's vision. Marcus Chen had been sentenced to 3 years in a minimum security facility. Elena had visited him once, not for reconciliation, but for closure. She told Ryan it was the hardest conversation of her life. Facing someone who'd loved her in the wrong way, whose protection had become control, whose loyalty had turned to betrayal. But she'd also told Marcus something important, that she forgave him. Not for what he'd done, but for being human enough to make terrible choices for complicated reasons. It was the kind of grace Elena was learning to extend, to Marcus, to herself, to everyone struggling to be better than they were. Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah with a photo. Ethan in a school play, dressed as a tree, grinning impossibly wide. The message read, "He wants you to come to tomorrow's performance. No supervision required. Trust has to start somewhere." Ryan smiled, saving the photo. His relationship with his son was still fragile, still rebuilding, but it was moving in the right direction. Ethan had started asking about his father's new job, about Elena, about whether Ryan was happy now. And Ryan could answer honestly, yes. For the first time in years, yes. "You ready?" Elena stood in his doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. It was Saturday, no board meetings or crisis management or corporate warfare. Just two people who'd decided to spend their free day together, figuring out what they were beyond the professional partnership. "Where are we going again?" "You'll see. It's a surprise." They drove for an hour outside the city, Elena refusing to answer any questions, Ryan pretending to be annoyed but actually enjoying the mystery. Finally, she pulled onto a familiar stretch of highway, Route 23, the same road where Ryan had found her bleeding 10 years ago. Elena parked on the shoulder at almost the exact spot where it had happened. "I haven't been back here since that night," she said quietly. "I was afraid to. Afraid it would bring back the terror, the pain, the feeling of dying alone in the dark." She got out of the car, and Ryan followed. They stood on the side of the highway, cars rushing past, the world moving too fast to notice two people standing still. "But I'm not that person anymore," Elena continued. "I'm not running from my father. I'm not bleeding and alone and convinced I'll die before morning. I'm strong and surrounded by people who care about me and building something worth protecting." She pulled something from her pocket. The old watch. The one that had started everything, the one that never kept time. "I want to leave this here. Not because I'm forgetting what you did for me, but because I don't need it anymore. The promise is fulfilled. The debt is repaid. We're not stranger and dying girl anymore. We're something new." Elena walked to the edge of the ditch where Ryan had found her and carefully placed the broken watch among the weeds. "Thank you," she said to the memory of that night, "for stopping, for staying, for giving me a reason to believe kindness still existed." Then she turned back to Ryan, and her expression shifted from reflection to hope. "So what now? We've saved the company, restructured the governance, closed the deal. We've repaid debts and fulfilled promises and proven that trust works. What do we do next?" Ryan looked at this brilliant, impossible woman who'd crashed into his life in a storm and changed everything. He thought about the long road they'd traveled, from that highway to this moment, from broken promises to something whole. "We build something new," he said, "not because we owe each other, not because of debt or promises or crisis, just because we want to." Elena smiled, real and unguarded. "I'd like that." They stood together on that highway, in the place where their story had begun, and Ryan understood something fundamental. Some promises were meant to be kept. Some debts deserve to be repaid. And sometimes the things that saved you were the very things you least expected. 10 years ago, he'd stopped for a stranger. Today, he was standing beside someone who'd become so much more. The watch lay in the ditch, its hands frozen at 11:47, no longer needed to carry a promise across time. Because some promises, once fulfilled, transformed into something better. Into choice. Into partnership. Into the possibility of building a future together, one decision at a time, trusting that what they'd learned in crisis would hold in peace. Ryan took Elena's hand, and together they walked back to the car, leaving the past behind and stepping into whatever came next. The city lights glittered in the distance as they drove home, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ryan felt like he belonged somewhere, not because he owed anyone, but because he'd chosen to stay. And Elena, driving beside him, felt the weight of her father's legacy finally lifting. She'd built something different, something collaborative and transparent and human, something that might actually last. They'd both been broken by their pasts, both destroyed by people who'd betrayed them, both convinced that trust was dangerous and control was survival. But they'd learned something more important, that trust, once earned, was stronger than control, that collaboration was more powerful than command, that sometimes the only way to save yourself was to let other people help carry the weight. The broken watch lay in a ditch beside Route 23, its promise fulfilled, and two people who'd once saved each other in the dark drove toward a future they'd build together in the light.